ho, yo, ho, yo, ho.
Well, hello there, everybody. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful Thursday night. It is me, the PieRatKing, here with you to go over the Democratic debate. It is the third Democratic debate. There's only 10 candidates tonight. I'm sorry. That's why I asked. I hope you have a good night, Foxy. I hope. Hello, Mosen. Hello, Foxy. Hello, Mimi. So we're going to do live commentary. We're going to talk about what they talk about. I'm going to point out the problems I have with them. I know all of y'all know already, I am actually running for Congress in my district to become a U.S. representative under the Libertarian platform. Well, if they, nominate me. If not, I'm going to run as an independent. All these good vibes have you should be very suspicious of my good vibes. But I do want to go, I enjoy this part of the process, this whittling down the nominees, this debate between the different people that want to become president. And then, next year we will have the debate between whoever the DNC nominates and President Trump. And then we'll see if a libertarian can actually get into debate, because last time they, kept them out of it last time. So it might just be another two-horse race again. But hey, that's politics here in the United States for you. Anyways, I do enjoy this part of it. I tend to focus on certain aspects that they do bring up. I do want to give y'all a chance to hear what the candidates are saying, so I don't chime in unless I see something completely weird what they said, or something that they have a problem with, or that I have a problem with personally. Y'all are welcome to chime in and chat, and we can just discuss these things. We can discuss our beliefs on them, whether the candidates brought up a good point or whether they're crazies. And I'm going to tell you, anybody that runs for office is a crazy person. So you're looking at one right here. So as I said, we're going to try to keep it civil in here. Don't shout down each other. Don't call each other names. I really do want PieRat TV to maintain a semblance of open discussion where, people can express their opinions and, not feel like they're going to be instantly attacked. And I know that's a very difficult thing. So let's bring up the stream, because it's about to start in about 10 seconds. Kabam! There we go. I'm going to turn the volume on. Tell me how the volume is, whether it's good or bad, whether I should turn it up, whether ABC does a better job at production than CNN did last time.
The stage is set. The field has been narrowed.
Oh, it's George Stephanopoulos.
Candidates are here. Our Democratic primary debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special.
I think I should turn it up a little bit.
President for every American.
Snuffleupagus. That's what I said. Right? There's Bernie. So to get into this debate, you had to have at least 2% polling in like 4 polls that the DNC decides are legitimate polls. That's why my fan favorite, Tulsi Gabbard, is not in there. But it's fine. Also, I have gummy bears for tonight.
Live from Texas, Southern
Gummy bears and coffee, they go together, right?
Texas. Here now.
Hey, it's my city. Woo!
Good evening and welcome to Houston. We are live from Texas Southern University for tonight's Democratic.
Ah, they're at Texas Southern. They're in the 3rd Ward.
Here it's going to start right now, and on the stage you see
some really good fried chicken down the street from that hall. Really good fried chicken.
Not met the threshold. So for the first time in this primary, a single debate in a single night.
Can y'all hear it?
With all the top candidates.
Or do I need to turn it up?
It is a critical test for candidates and their campaigns at a critical time for our country.
Okay.
They're going to lay out their vision.
Turn it up. Okay, Foxy.
Their records, their differences with President Trump and each other. We're going to our best
yeah.
to bring you a live.
Well, I mean, did you not see what they did in 2016? The only reason Bernie lost the nomination was because of superdelegates.
David Muir, our national correspondent Lindsay Davis, and Jorge Ramos from our partner network Univision. Jorge?
George, thank you very much.
Univision.
We appreciate the opportunity to welcome Latinos across the country and to ask about Latinx issues during these challenging times. En este país también se habla español. Este debate se realiza en un momento muy difícil para los latinos en Texas y en todo Estados Unidos, pero es importante que ellos sepan, que sepamos que este también es nuestro país. Let me just give you a little translation here. I'm telling Latinos that despite the fact that we are facing difficult times, this is our country too. Lindsay.
We are delighted to be on the beautiful campus of Texas Southern University, one of the largest historically black colleges and universities in the country. And here in the Health
Right
and
next
Physical
door to the
Education
University of
building
Houston.
tonight, we are joined by a live
Literally,
audience
they're
of
like, you go across the street
3,500
from the
people,
University of
most
Houston, it's
invited by
Texas
the
Southern.
Democratic National Committee.
They're,
And
when
of
they
course,
play
some of
each
the
other in
brightest
football,
minds of the student body
their
here
marching
at
band,
TSU.
Texas Southern's marching band will march all the way from their school to the stadium.
Candidates will have 1
It's
minute
great.
15 seconds to answer a direct question and 45 seconds for a rebuttal or response as directed by one of the moderators. Candidates will each see green and yellow lights.
What did Biden just shove in his
right there,
pocket?
indicating how much time they have remaining. And when time is up, the light will turn red. Candidates who interrupt will be subject
Question,
to having their
does
time
Elizabeth
reduced
Warren
later on.
only own that
This
one
is
jacket?
democracy, the great American experiment, and the candidates are here tonight to make their case.
The podium placements based on their current standings in nationally recognized polls with the leading candidates in the center. All candidates have been told they can have 1 minute to make an opening
And
statement.
Andrew Yang
We're gonna
again.
begin
Oh,
in reverse
Andrew Yang
polling
and
order
Buttigieg
with
aren't wearing
Secretary Julian
ties.
Castro.
Good evening y bienvenidos a Texas. Welcome to Texas. It's great to be here at TSU, home of the Tigers. You know, on January 20th, 2021, at 12:01 p.m., we're going to have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. There will be life after
That's
Donald
bold
Trump.
statements there, Juan.
But the truth is that our problems didn't start just with Donald Trump, and we won't solve them by embracing old ideas. We need a bold vision. Universal pre-K and universal health care.
No,
unleashing millions of new
Yang
jobs
doesn't.
in the
I don't
clean
know if
energy
Yang can
economy.
speak Spanish.
A tax system that rewards people who have to work for a living. But first we have to win. And that means exciting a young, diverse coalition of Americans who are ready for a bold future. That's what Kennedy did. It's what Carter did. It's what Clinton did. It's what Barack Obama did. And it's what I can do in this
I mean,
race.
Carter didn't have
Get
that
back
hard of a
Michigan, Wisconsin,
problem.
Pennsylvania, Florida,
Nixon
Georgia, Arizona,
gave everybody a
and
bad taste in their
finally,
mouth,
turn
and
Texas blue
Gerald
and
Ford
say
was kind of
goodbye to Donald Trump.
meh.
Senator Klobuchar.
Good evening, Texas Southern. I believe that what unites us up here, the 10 of us, is much stronger than what divides us. And I think that's true of our country, too. Now, I may not be the loudest person up here, but I think we've already got
No,
that
we all
in
know
the
that's
White
Bernie.
House. Houston, we have a problem.
Oh, God, I hate
We
that
have a
freaking
guy
cliche.
there that is literally running our country like a game show. He would rather
Can we
lie
never?
than lead.
Can I never hear?
I think we need
Houston, we have a
something
problem
different.
ever
I'm
again.
someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you.
Yes,
and that
exactly,
is how
Mosen.
you govern as well. So
Would you boo her,
you're going
Foxy?
to hear a lot of ideas up here. Some will be great, but if you see
Or would you just
that
laugh?
some of them seem a little off track, I've got a better way. If you feel stuck in the middle of the extremes in our politics and you are tired of the noise and the nonsense, you've got a home with me. Because I don't want to be the president.
Yeah, it's the
for
same
half of
opportunity
America.
sports
I
writers
want to
and
be the
sports
president
analysts have been using for the
all
past
of
50
America.
years. We're kind of bored of it. I don't blame her, but I'm just saying, being somebody from Houston, it's
an honor
like,
to be on this debate stage. It is wonderful to be back in Texas, in Houston, back here at TSU. On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me and I think produced a turning point.
He
for
looks
this
like
country.
Bobby Kennedy,
The first
doesn't he?
Is just how dangerous
like a thinner Bobby
Donald Trump
Kennedy.
is, the cost and the consequence of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been a part of America was welcomed out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place, inspired to kill by our president. The second is how insufficient our politics is to meet the threat that we have right now. The bitterness, the
I'm pretty
pettiness,
sure
the
that
smallness of the
shooter's
moment,
manifesto said
the
he
incentives
hated
to
Trump.
attack one another and try to make differences
Pretty
without
sure.
distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively. That's what I want to do for you as President of the United States. Thank you.
Senator Cory Booker.
It was over 20 years ago that I was a law student and moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey to serve as a tenants' rights lawyer to try to address the challenges in my community. And I was sobered by them, the gun violence, the substandard housing. But it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn,
Oh, I
and
knew that one,
defiant,
Leslie.
and can put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change. She was a church woman that said, without vision, the people will perish. Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community, and we did things that other people thought was impossible. That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose. The differences amongst us Democrats on the stage are not as great as the urgency for us to unite as a party, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to unite America in common cause and common purpose. That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will.
But the only
lead
time
this
that the
nation.
United States stands united is when
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
we are being attacked by an outside force.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our
That's
hospitals,
the
our
problem
media,
with
even our
that
government.
statement.
It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and
All right,
tell us how
going to
$1,000
Yang.
a month will help you do just
I'm going to
that.
yang2020.com and I'm going to tell him $1,000 a month will help me run for Republican, for the Libertarian Party.
It's original, I'll give you that. The American people are divided and doubtful at the very moment we need to rise to some of the greatest challenges we've ever seen. As a mayor of an industrial city coming back from the brink, as a veteran of
I wonder
the
how
war in
many
Afghanistan,
interns
I know
Yang is
what's
going to
at
have to
stake
fire to
in
pay
our
those
national leadership.
10 people, though.
We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us. But then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than the part about us. Good politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the
Some of them are,
day-to-day
Mosen.
lives of Americans. We just marked the anniversary of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment we came together as a country. Imagine if we had been able
Wait,
to sustain
isn't that just what I
unity.
said?
Imagine what would be possible right
Pretty
now
sure I just said that.
with ideas that are bold enough to meet the challenges of our time, but big enough as well that they could unify the American people. That's what presidential leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for, and that is why I'm asking for your vote.
It's kind of like, okay, to kind of dumb it down, it's kind of like military members. All right?
Senator Kamala
Veterans poke fun
Thank you.
and
It's
make
great
fun
to
of
be
each
back
other
at
all the
TSC.
time, especially
So
for
I
different
plan on
branches,
spending
different
tonight
jobs.
talking with you about
We
my
poke fun at
plans
each
to
other,
address
but anybody
the
else comes
problems that
and makes
keep you
fun
up
of our
at
freaking
night.
military brothers.
But first,
You
I
know,
have a few words for
we'll
Donald
knock
Trump.
somebody out.
who we all know is watching. So President Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division among us, and that is why we've gotten nothing done. You have used hate,
stuff has gotten done.
Fear, and over 12,000 lives.
He just made it to where 100% disabled veterans get all of their school loans paid off.
The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says the sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. But here's what you don't get. What you don't get is that the American people are so much better than this. And we know that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, regardless of our race, where we live, or the party with which we're registered to vote. And I plan on focusing on our common issues,
the problem with this is they built steam for this last election for 2 years ago, or for a year ago, on we're going to impeach Trump, we're going to impeach Trump, we're going to impeach Trump. And then they realized, once they got into office, that if they actually try to impeach Trump, it's not going to end well for them. And if they don't impeach Trump, it's not going to end well for them. So they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't.
Senator Sanders.
Yeah, and then plus you have Pence.
Be blunt and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress or in the media. And that is, it goes without saying that we must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country. But we must
I don't know. Andrew Johnson was pretty dangerous.
We must do more. We have got to recognize
trying to think who
this country
else
is moving into an oligarchic
I think Bush and Barack were kind of dangerous to the American people.
Control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on. Yes, we will raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Yes, we will fight.
Bernie, wait, Bernie, you can't even pay your own employees that are working on your campaign a living wage.
And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
And still ignore nuclear power.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All three of my brothers served in military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids. And when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class
Andy Griffith.
Have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken. I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Vice President Joe Biden.
You know, when President Kennedy announced the moonshot, he used a phrase that sticks with me my whole life. He said, we're doing it because we refuse to postpone. Well, I refuse to postpone one more minute spending billions of dollars on curing cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find cures. I refuse to postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through.
No,
high school
it's the way he worded it. It sounded bad, Mosen.
To postpone
it's
the
way he's wording it.
Climate change and leading the world in taking on climate change.
I sat there and I was like,
look, this is the United States.
Did he just say what I think he said?
There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we were not able to do it.
He refuses to postpone trying to cure
we're the
cancer.
best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving. there's enormous, enormous opportunities once we get rid of Donald Trump.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing, the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary
because
debate.
he's against
Those senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare
universal health care
with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
That'll be for the voters to decide that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. Thus far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but it gets him about halfway there. There's a lot of other things that need to be done. I have a bold plan to deal with making sure we triple the money for at-risk schools that are Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion a year. But I go down the line, and each of the things we're talking about, I lay out how I can pay for it, how I can get it done, and why it's better.
Senator Warren, let me take that to you, particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about health care. He's actually praised Bernie Sanders for being candid about his health care plan. Senator Sanders has been candid about the fact that middle-class taxes are going to go up and most of private insurance is going to be eliminated. Will you make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care.
Oh, now you
in
like
America
the guy.
and committed this country to health care.
Last time y'all hated him.
And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less.
Yeah.
That's how this is going to work.
Direct question. You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe
of course they will.
The deductibles and the premiums
taxes will all go up. That's the only way you
will
can
private
pay
insurance
for
be
it.
eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost, total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for all. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work.
But she completely ignored the question.
You were invoked by the Vice President.
She completely ignored the question. Warren,
that
You know that taxes are going to go up for the middle class, for the lower class, and for the upper class. You know the taxes have to go up. You are afraid to say it because you're afraid of losing the people who actually are more worried about money coming out of their pocket before they even get it than people that are worried about it after they get the money.
I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need
that the government has continued to back by keeping up with their patents and their patent system.
Provides $100 billion a year in profit.
Like there's more to it than just the insurance company being or the pharmaceutical companies being greedy. Part of it, they use that money to continue research, to advance their products, to advance research into new drugs. Part of it is because of the patent system not allowing generics to come out onto the market within a reasonable time.
Significantly cut the cost of it. Longest
So,
out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000.
So they have no competition. So of course they're going to bump that price up as high as they can.
Automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, etc. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now,
I don't understand. Like they continue to say, "Oh, it's because of the pharmaceuticals. It's because of the pharmaceuticals." No, it's because of the laws that that Congress has put into place years and years and years, time and after again. And if they would turn around and say, "Okay, let's go back and look at the patent laws."
Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion.
If we make it to where another company can grab that patent 5-10 years down the road and make generics, boom, that price of that original price will drop. It has to, because they have to compete with the generics that are coming out.
That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea if you like it. I don't like it.
Okay, now I want everybody to keep to the time, but you did invoke both senators. I have to get responses to them. Then we will go now. Senator Warren, you go first.
So let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people who like their doctors. I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. Met people who like.
And you're going to see a mass exodus of good doctors
access to health care. And we just need to be
leaving
clear about what Medicare
if the government takes over the health
Instead
insurance.
Of paying premiums into insurance
You're going to
companies,
see a
and then
mass
having
exodus
insurance
of doctors.
companies build their profits by saying no.
This is what I've been told by doctors.
We're going to do this by saying everyone is covered
Because they
by
hate
Medicare for
dealing
all.
with
Every
government
healthcare provider
insurance.
is covered.
That's why
And
they
the
stopped
only
taking
question here in
Medicaid. That's
terms
why
of
they stopped
difference
taking Medicare.
is where to send the bill.
That's why they,
Sanders.
even though the VA is a completely different beast that they're finally trying to
In the United
fix.
States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita on health care as the Canadians or any other major country on earth.
Because their payments for health care come out before their paycheck comes to their bank account, Bernie.
And they guarantee health care to all people under my Medicare for All proposal.
Thank you for the host, Arnold.
Booty is mine.
Maybe you have run into people who love their premiums. I haven't. What people want is cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American
Then
substantial
drop
sums
your
of money
drop
on
your
his
Senate-backed
or her
insurance
Senator,
policy, Bernie.
Senator Klobuchar,
Go to
you
the
said in your
VA.
opening statement you don't
Go
really
use
wanna
the
represent
VA
people
health
stuck in the
insurance.
middle of the extremes. Who represents the extreme on this stage?
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George. So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could respond to some of the proposals from my friends.
You're
First
not
of
going to
all,
be able to
Senator Sanders
convince
and I have worked valiantly
veterans
to bring down the cost
and
of pharmaceuticals.
families
That
of
was
veterans
Senator Sanders' amendment to allow
that
drugs
the
to come in
government
from
will
less
be
expensive countries like
able to
Canada.
provide
We have
a
worked to bring
good
down
healthcare
the
system.
cost by
You're not going to,
fighting
because we've seen
to
time
allow
and time and time
43
again
million seniors. That's a
that
bill I
the
lead
government running
to
the healthcare
negotiate
system
for better
screws
prices
the
under
people going to
Medicare.
health.
I figure that's
to
a
get
lot
health.
of seniors, and they should be allowed to get a better price. But when it comes to
when you're in the
our
military,
healthcare
anything
and
that
what
you go
comes
into the
to our
doctor for, oh,
premiums, I go with the
here's
doctor's
500
brief,
milligrams of
which is do
ibuprofen.
no
Have a good
harm.
day.
And while Bernie
I literally
wrote the
had to
bill, I
fight
read
my
the bill.
doctor while I was in the
on
Army
page
to get an MRI.
On page 8 of the bill, it says that we will no longer have private insurance as we know it. And that means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years. I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea. And what I favor is something that what Barack Obama wanted to do from the very beginning, and that is a public option, a nonprofit choice that will bring down the cost of insurance, cover 12 million more people, and bring down the prices for 13 million more people. That is a bold idea.
Senator Warren, page 8 of the bill, she says 149 people will lose their health insurance.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 149 people will lose their health insurance.
149
million.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
So let's be clear about this. People will have access to all of their doctors, all of their nurses.
No, they
their
won't. You
community
can't make these
hospitals,
claims.
their rural
We learned
hospitals.
after the
Doctors
ACA
won't
became.
have to hire people to fill out crazy
Yes,
forms.
they do.
They won't have to spend time on
They
the
have to
phone
do
arguing
more.
with insurance
Yes, they
companies.
do.
People who have sick family members won't have to get into these battles. What this is about is making sure that we
Warren,
have the
you
most
obviously have never
efficient
worked
way
in a doctor's
possible
office.
to pay for healthcare
It
for
is so much
everyone in this
easier to
country.
deal with an insurance company than it
companies
is to
last
deal
year
with the government
sucked
insurance.
$23 billion in profits out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care coverage.
Mayor Buttigieg.
The problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote and that Senator Warren backs is that it doesn't trust the American people. I trust you to choose what makes the most sense for you, not my way or the highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves. I trust the American people to make the right choice for them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
One of the biggest problems I had with the ACA was that it mandated that everybody have to have health
50
insurance.
million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs or they go unemployed or their employer changes their insurance policy. Medicare for all is comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for all.
So, okay, here's my problem with that. You're not going to pay more than $200 for all of your pills, but
I want to give credit first
what if
to Barack Obama.
you're
for
taking
really bringing
200
us this
different
far.
kinds of
We
pills?
would not be here if he hadn't the
Or,
courage,
I mean, nobody's
the
going to be taking
talent, or
that.
the
But what
will
if you're
to see
taking
us
10,
this far.
15, 20 different kinds of
Credit
pills?
to Bernie.
You know, every day.
You know,
What
you
if
brought
for
us this far in
your
Medicare
your
for
cancer
all. I
treatment,
support
you know,
Medicare for
you're
all.
having to
I
take
always have, but
5 to
I wanted
10
make
different
the plan
kinds of
better,
drugs?
which I did,
What if,
which is about
you know,
offering people
for
choice,
AIDS
not
treatment,
taking
you're
that
having to
from
take
them.
a cocktail
So in
of
my
drugs,
Medicare for
you
all
know,
plan,
like
people have the choice of a private
you're
plan
making
or
it
a
to
public
where
plan because that's what people
nobody
want. And I agree we
will
should
want
take choice from
to
people.
make
But
those
here's
drugs
the thing.
anymore or try to better
Everybody
them.
on this stage, I do believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least 5 people have talked, some repeatedly, on this subject, and not once have we talked about Donald Trump. So let's talk about the fact that Donald Trump came into office and spent almost the entire first year of his term trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all fought against it, and then the late, great John McCain, at that moment at about 2 o'clock in the morning, killed his
I don't think it's a bad thing.
attempt to take health care from millions of people in this country. Fast forward to today, and what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump's administration is trying to get rid of the ban that we placed on denying people who have pre-existing conditions coverage. Donald Trump is trying to say that our kids up to the age of 20.
Well, yeah, because he's dead
no
now.
longer
They
be
can put him up on the
plans.
pedestal
And frankly,
after
I
years
think
and
this
years and years of
discussion has
attacking
given
him.
the American public a headache. What they want to know is that they're going to have health care and cost will not be a barrier to getting it. But let's focus on the end goal. If we don't get Donald Trump out of office, he's going to get rid of all of it.
George, 15 seconds. 15 seconds.
Let me get to Congressman O'Rourke and then go ahead, Mr. Vice President.
15 seconds. Look, everybody says we want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance company, from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered, period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings. The president my friend from Vermont thinks that the employer is going to give you back if you negotiate his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
Senator Sanders.
George.
Go ahead.
All right. 2 points.
Yeah, he did.
You got to defend the fact that today,
He did.
not only do we have 87 million people uninsured and underinsured, you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease.
Wait,
cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program,
I want to know where he's getting his numbers from.
that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something. It's personal to me. Let me tell you something.
I want to know where he's
Every
getting his
single
number from,
person
honestly.
who is diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6, 8, 10 years, depending on you talk about, before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
Congressman O'Rourke.
Yeah. Thank you. Listen, I'm grateful that we all agree about the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump is undermining the limited protections that we have right now. But I also think we're being offered a false choice between those who
Mosen, that's what all these debates are always,
forcing
man.
tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared for in a state like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America,
Part of that is
everyone who's
because,
uninsured will be enrolled
much like
in Medicare.
cable
Everyone who's
companies,
insufficiently
there's only
insured,
like
cannot afford
2
it, can move
insurance
over to
companies
Medicare,
allowed
and
in your
those, like
state,
members of unions
and you
who
can't
fought for the
buy
healthcare plans that
from
work for
a
them
neighboring
and their
state or even a
families
state
are able to
across the
keep them.
country.
That is the best possible path forward.
Healthcare is the top issue for everyone in the country. I want to make sure
I'm pretty sure
gets
there's,
1 minute to respond. So
I know
Congressman
Blue Cross
Secretary
Blue Shield is
Castro,
one of them for
Andrew
Texas,
Yang,
and the other
then
one I think is
Senator
Aetna.
Booker, I'll get him.
Those are the only
Thank
2
you.
health
You know,
insurance
I
companies you
also
can get in
wanna
the state.
recognize,
And that's
the
how it
work
is in
that Bernie's
almost
done
every
on
state in
this.
the United
And
States.
of course, we owe a debt of
And you
gratitude
can't buy
to
like
President
health
Barack
insurance
Obama.
plan for somebody
Of course,
in
I
Minnesota
also work for President Obama,
because
Vice
of the
President
current
Biden,
laws
and
that
I
are
know
on the
the
book.
problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole time, she had Medicare. I want
Probably
every
not any other
single American
Muslim
family to have a strong Medicare plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference, because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago.
He did, but
you just said
it's not what he meant.
They would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in. If you qualify
are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago?
Be enforced.
Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and
I mean,
now you're saying they don't have
he
to buy
did,
in.
but Castro's taking what he said completely literal. Which
enrolls people.
Castro, that's a little bit of a dirty underhand there, bud.
Or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his healthcare plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My healthcare plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama.
But you know, he said you have to opt. You can go and opt in after you lose your insurance and automatically be approved for it.
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable. This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about Washington. Scoring points against each other, poking at each other, and telling each other that you're my plan, your plan. Look, we all
that's called a Democratic primary election.
Oh, Castro. Castro, are you trying to pull a Tulsi?
Yeah, but a house divided cannot stand. And that is not how we're going to
everyone, we know we're
No.
on the same team here.
Never mind, I'm not going to go into that.
Team. We all have a better vision for healthcare than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current healthcare system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as full-time employees. You instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs. It's certainly harder to start a business. The pitch we have to make the American people is we will get the healthcare
why is that?
And then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Let me think why that is.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors, and they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy. We should change the incentives so instead of revenue and activity, people are focused on our health and the healthcare system. And the Cleveland Clinic, where they're paid.
I'm Asian, so you can trust me. I know a lot of doctors.
Shocker, they prescribe fewer procedures, and patient health stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
I'm hoping it catches it.
Thank you very much.
If not, I'm going to go back and take
it. Home right now, listening to us, that are afraid.
Oh, I am right now.
Because they are in crisis. They don't have health insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough. They can't afford their prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all. I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency right now in this nation. Everybody feels it. And as a person who has an ideal, I know we cannot sacrifice progress on the altar of purity.
It is tweeted
because
out.
People in my community, they need help right now. They have high blood pressure right now. They have unaffordable insulin right now. And this must be a moment where we as Democrats can begin to show that we can not only stake and stand our ground, but find common ground, because we've got one shot to make Donald Trump.
That just made this whole debate worth watching. Right there for that.
We cannot lose it by the way we talk about each other or demonize and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am the leader, I will work towards the ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans. But every single day, I'll join with other Democrats to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Candidates, thank you. Lindsay Davis.
Thanks, George. Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to start with young black voters. Several recent polls indicate their #1 concern is racism. This campus, this state, and this nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama, but each of you on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse. Congressman O'Rourke, coming to you first, why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
You know, I called this out in no uncertain terms on August 3rd and every day since then, and I was talking about it long before then as well. Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational. We can mark the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was brought to this country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy. We have to be able to answer this challenge, and it is.
I'll go have to tell my
education system.
have to tell my black doctor that he's not allowed to enjoy his wealth.
5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled based on the color of their skin. In our healthcare system, where
that's what he just said. He just said that the descendants of the slaves are not allowed to.
In white America than there is in black America. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill.
Oh my goodness. Reparations again. You're not going to address what at its foundation?
That we have a white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people all across this country.
Wow. Beto, you are floundering, homie. I'm just letting you know.
I want to commend Beto for how well he has spoken to the passion and the frustration and the sadness after what happened in his hometown of El Paso. He's done a great job with that. Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 hours inspired by this president to kill people who look like me.
Mosen, part of the problem with a lot of things that they say is that they ignore the statistical makeup of this country in general.
I'm also proud that
like,
I was the first to put
completely.
forward a police reform plan, because we're not going to have any more Laquan McDonald's or Eric Garner's or Michael Brown's.
Michael Brown did something wrong.
Or Walter Scott,
legitimately.
or Sandra Bland here from the Houston
he
area.
attacked a police officer, tried to pull his gun away from him.
We can do that because that doesn't represent the vast majority of
Why are we
Americans
still
who
talking
do have a
about
good
this?
heart. They also need a leader.
Eric Garner,
and
I agree. That was messed up, and the cop should have been fired. Oh, wait, he finally did after the last debate, after people were demanding he was fired.
Isn't a racist. It's who's going to do something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no red badge of courage for calling him that. When racism exists, the question isn't who isn't a racist, it's who is and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy.
He did! Oh my God.
Our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go
he
all
can't
the way
condemn
back to slavery, but dear
white
God,
supremacy,
we
but
have a
he
criminal
did
justice
exactly
system that is so
that.
racially biased. We have more African
Like-
Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism.
I can explain to you why that is, Booker.
Plan to do something
Maybe
about
it's called
it. If I am
population
president
growth.
of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism is dealt with in substantive plans, from criminal justice reform to the disparities in healthcare to even one that we don't talk about enough.
I'm all for
which
criminal
is
justice
the racism
reform.
that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
Mayor,
I'm all for criminal justice reform.
You've been struggling with issues around race in your own community. You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's
I
not
agree.
enough to
Dismantle
just
the
take a
entire
racist
federal government.
policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generation
The Department of Drug Enforcement Agency.
Everything from housing
Yeah.
to education.
You
to
want to
health,
talk?
to
You want to talk
employment,
about
basically puts us in two different countries.
the overstepping
I
of bounds?
propose the most
The DEA
comprehensive vision
does it
to
all the
tackle
time.
systemic racism in every one of these areas, marshaling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but
This
Yeah.
time, a Douglas
BATFA
plan
is another one.
right here at home to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs that are training and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can and must do that, but that means transcending this framework that pits us against each other, that pits a single black mother of 3 against a displaced auto worker. Because where I come from, a lot of times that displaced auto worker is a single black mother of 3. We've got to say that and bring people together.
Also a concern for people of color is criminal justice reform. Senator Harris, you released your plan for that just this week, and it does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization of marijuana, now you don't. You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings, now you don't. You've said that you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
Right.
So there have been, I'm glad you asked me this question, and there have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very
Oh, really?
clear. I made a decision to become a prosecutor for 2 reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias.
So you continued
and I
to
can tell you
use
extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had.
that
But I
criminal
made a
justice
decision that if I was
position.
going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings for police officer on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan that is about ending mass incarceration, about taking the profit out of the criminal justice system. I plan on shutting down for-profit prisons on day 1. It will be about what we need to do to hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system,
women who inherently serve shorter terms have lighter penalties.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Senator Klobuchar
Are the ones she's focusing
as a
on.
prosecutor in Minnesota,
Where
dozens of
a lot of the
black men
offenders
were killed by
are
police.
men.
Critics say that too often you sided with police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
That's not my record. We are
No, the ACLU is
at a historically black college. And I think of an alum of that college, Barbara Jordan, and something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state. I now believe it is better for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards, who was doing her homework.
What was great about whatever Kamala said, too, was she didn't even answer the question.
What changes did we make? Go after white-collar crimes in a
because
big way.
What was being attacked was her
work with the Innocence
her
Project to make sure we do
incarceration
much better with
record and
eyewitness ID.
her
And
what
as a
Tulsi
senator
brought up
and
last
as your
declaration
president,
or
I will make
last
sure that we
last
don't
debate,
just do the First
which
Step
was
Act when it comes
the
to
fact
criminal
that
sentencing,
she
that we move
continued
to
to
the Second
use
Step Act, which
the
means the 90% of
Civil
people
Justice
that are
Department
incarcerated in
of
local and
California
state jails.
to
Let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders and let's
keep
give
people
them
in
jobs
jail
and let them
longer than
vote
they should
when
have
they get
been,
out of prison.
and
Thank
keep
you,
people in
Senator
jail
Booker.
that were exonerated by DNA
The
evidence.
war on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President Biden, you have a plan to release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in a poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should change is the whole model has to change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. As when we were in the White House, we released 36,000 people from the federal prison system. Nobody should be in jail for a drug problem. They should be going directly to a rehabilitation. We build more rehabilitation
One of the
centers,
biggest
not
problems
prisons.
with that
I'm
is
the guy
that
put
to
in the
actually
drug
succeed at
courts to divert
rehabilitation,
people from
you
the
have to
criminal
want
justice
to
system.
be
And so we have to change the whole way
rehabilitated
we look at this.
from
When we
drugs.
put people in prison, we have
You
to
can't
put them to, when they get
just
out.
force people
Nobody
into it
who got
and
in
hope
prison
that
for marijuana,
they
for
never,
example,
go
immediately
back
upon
to
being
it.
released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned. When you finish your term in prison, you should be able not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines. And the fact is we've learned so much more.
Well, no, that'll be something they'll never
Senator
mind.
Booker, 45
And
seconds to respond.
I wouldn't be before that
Our
either.
criminal justice system is
Well, I
so
wouldn't be for violent
savagely
felons.
broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives. And so much of this comes down to privilege. We have a criminal justice system that Brian Stevenson says treats you better if you're rich and guilty than if you're poor and innocent.
That's
and so
true.
I have challenged this whole field. We can specifically and demonstratively now show that there are 17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has already led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom.
Oh, cameraman, what are you doing?
We need to reform this system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
Thank you, Lindsay. I want to turn to the deadly mass shootings here in this country, and of course we are all mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last month alone. El Paso, which we've discussed, in Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor. If you couldn't get it done after Sandy Hook, why should voters give you another chance?
Because the guy's done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady Bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look
I mean,
what's
we
happened
almost
now.
have completely
Mothers,
universal
their
backgrounds
organization,
already.
Mothers Against Violence, what gun violence.
The only
We
thing
see
they
what's
don't that we
happened
don't
again.
background
Now
check
we have
is
all
private
these
to
young
private
people
sales
marching
within
on
the same
Washington,
state.
making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50%.
Because if you live in different states, you can't private to private sale. You have to go through an FFL.
Supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying, is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is, things have changed. And
You
things
ban
have
them, you're
changed
just going
a
to make
lot.
people hide them
And
more.
Now what's happening is, and by the way, the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right.
Yeah,
That's
true,
good.
The way he handled what happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids.
You're
to
using
understand
my
those
taxpayer
parents,
money
you
to
understand
try and
how
buy
hard
my gun
it
with
is
me
already
from me.
to do this.
Like,
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here. You did bring up assault weapons here, and many of you on this stage have talked about executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after Sandy Hook, more
import
than 23
of
executive
AR-15
actions, and yet
Wait a
here we
minute.
all are today.
Oh, yeah,
In
I
recent
forgot.
days, former
Most
Vice
of the
President
creators of
Biden
AR-15s
has
are
said
here in the
about
United
executive
States.
orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the vice president have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the senator answer.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
No. No.
Let's be constitutional.
No.
We got a constitution.
And yes, we can.
Thank you,
because
Joe.
I'll tell you something. The way that I think
Joe
about
is the
this
only sane
is,
person up there saying that's against the Constitution.
I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you.
Yeah?
And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing, to act is just, it is
not your
overlooking
job
the fact
as
that
the
every
president
day
to
in
create
America, our
laws.
babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students, where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, I had to have one of those drills. It is traumatizing our children. El Paso, and Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me in El Paso, they said, you know, because I have a long-standing record on this issue, they said, well, do you think Trump is responsible for what happened? And I said, well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand by what you said on an executive order?
What I said was, the question, speak to constitutional scholars.
Yeah.
If, in fact, we could say, by the way, you can't own the following weapons, period. It cannot be sold anymore. Check with constitutional scholars. Now,
Mr. Vice President, thank you.
Could I tell you
Congressman
what you
O'Rourke, I
could
want to
do
come to you
in
on
100
this.
days?
I'm going to work down the row here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you. El Paso is your hometown. Some on this stage have suggested a voluntary buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this work?
I am. If it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a battlefield.
All weapons are designed to kill people.
The high-impact, high-velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children And in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15.
It isn't.
And that mother watched her bleed
they're
to death
conflating
over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow
okay.
Americans anymore.
I'll go buy an M1A.
And I want to say this. I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America.
Who did you find that said that?
Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike.
Make a point.
Congressman,
I use an AR-15 to hunt coyotes and hogs all the time.
About your uncle and the proud hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response to Congressman O'Rourke tonight. Where do you stand on mandatory gun buybacks?
Who told you this?
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us. Everyone up here favors an assault weapon ban. Everyone up here favors.
I'm telling you, all they're going to do by making an assault weapon ban is cause people to change out the stocks of their current rifles to wood grain. That's all. That's all they're going to do.
Innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people.
The cops did not get there in 1 minute.
You know what else unites us? And I'll tell you this. What unites us is that right now, on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills: universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
They already are. It's illegal for domestic abusers to own a firearm, to touch a firearm. It's already illegal. That's already on the books.
Program. That's what I think, David. But I want to finish this because if you
what
want
is wrong with
now,
these people? Do they not read the bills? Do they not know the current? Oh no, they don't know the current laws. They're just in charge of making all the laws, anyways.
One of us gets in the White House. We have
domestic
to pass those bills
people that have been found guilty of domestic violence, it is against the law for them to even touch a firearm.
About guns and about the candidates on this stage, that the
differences
do matter. Those
were
the
law.
Words.
It is a felony.
You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
So background checks and gun licensing, these are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans.
I don't agree with it.
80% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue.
Yeah,
look,
with an M1 carbine. I know.
It was about 20 years ago that I came out of my home when I moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, and witnessed the aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting after shooting in neighborhoods like mine for decades, this has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for gun licensing. And I'm happy.
I'm against gun licensing. And people that throw, oh, you have to have a license to drive a car. You have to have a license to drive a car because that's the way the state gets your tax money for driving on their roads. That's all it is. You never get retested after that initial test when you're 16 years old, or whenever you first get your driver's license.
In our nation, we are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to
unless you have lost your license for an extended period of time, you don't have to retest to ever get to keep getting your driver's license.
Empathy where people don't wait for this
all it is a tax. That's it.
They stand up and
your license is basically the government saying, hey, we're going to tax you every 5 to 6 years to use our roads, or 8 years.
On this issue, because I have seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine, because we forget national shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies.
Booker,
but the majority of the homicide
firearms
victims
are extremely hard to
come
get
from
in your
neighborhoods
city.
like mine. Nobody has ascended to the White House that will bring more personal passion on this issue. I will fight this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights, if it was this idea that we can't get it done because of the situation in the Senate, I'm looking to lead a movement. The number one reason why governments are formed is to protect the citizenry. Think about this. We have had more people die due to gun violence in my lifetime than every single war in this country combined from the Revolutionary War till now. This is not a side issue to me. It is a central issue to me. That is the kind of fight, because the majority of homicide victims, we have a mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight
and more
together
people are
and
killed by
overwhelm those
cars
Republicans
than
who are not
guns
even
every
representing
year,
their
and that includes
constituency.
suicides.
Because the majority of Americans, the majority of gun owners, agree with me, not the corporate gun lobby.
I'm not trying to
It is time
equate
for
the
a
same.
movement on
I'm
this
just trying to
issue,
say.
and I will lead it.
Senator Booker, thank you. Senator Warren, I want to come to you next, because you have actually said in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it, and we're going to have to do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun deaths in this country significantly. But here's the deal. The question we need to ask is, when we've got this much support across the country, 90% of Americans want to see us do, I like registration, want to see us
Of course you do.
background checks, want to get assault
Of course you like
weapons
registration.
off the streets. Why doesn't it happen? And the answer is corruption, pure and simple.
No,
We
it's
have a
because
Congress that is beholden
registration
to the
is
gun
not
industry.
a good idea.
And unless
Just like
we're willing to
prohibition
address
is
that
not a good
head-on
idea.
and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54
Like I said, all you're
senators,
going to do is
it
cause people to
failed
switch
because of
the stock of their
filibuster.
rifle
Until
to a
we
wood
attack
grain.
the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to change Congress so it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren,
But
thank
your
you.
gun laws already
You bring up eliminating
affect the
filibuster,
poor.
which means you would
That's
need
what I'm.
simply a simple
That's one of the
majority
things that's
in
always
the Senate to
misconstrued.
get something
The
done.
gun
I wanna
laws
turn to Senator Sanders
currently on the
this, because
books
you've said before
already,
on this, if
and
Donald Trump
their
supports
registration
any
and their
filibuster, which
licensing
he's
programs
talked about
will
himself, you should be
or
nervous.
disproportionately
Do you
affect
support ending the
poor
filibuster?
and minority
No, but What I would
individuals.
support, absolutely, is passing major legislation. The gun
Your
legislation.
booty is mine.
Thank you, the host, Duckles.
Medicare
Your
for
booty is
all,
mine.
Climate change legislation that saves the planet. I will not wait for 60
Licensing and
votes
registration of
to make that
firearms
happen.
is
And you
going
could
to
do it in a
disproportionately
variety of
affect
ways.
poor
You could do
and
that through
minorities.
budget
It's going to.
reconciliation law. You have a vice
I
president.
forgot to do it
who will,
in
fact, tell
Discord.
the
I'm
Senate
sorry. I put it on
what
Twitter,
is
and I was in a little bit of a
appropriate
rush.
and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back
How are you
to
doing,
the
Douglas?
point that Elizabeth made, and that in fact, in terms of gun issues, picking up on Corey and Beto and everybody else, what we are looking at is a corrupt political system. And that means whether it is the drug companies or the insurance companies or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or in this case, you got an NRA, which has intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud.
Right,
that
that's what I was
year
thinking
after
too,
year,
Ducks.
I had an F rating
Man,
from
they
the
are.
NRA.
They
As
have
president,
been
I will not be
all over the
intimidated
place, Ducky.
by the NRA.
Senator Sanders.
Oh yeah, exactly,
Can I
Mosem.
respond?
There's
Can I?
We've been hearing a lot about what's been happening here in Texas. Only a few weeks ago, the deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among Latinos, and you know this, is very real. So let me start with an issue that is causing a lot of division.
I think you're wrong there, sir.
Vice President Biden, as a presidential
I'm
candidate,
pretty sure
in 2008,
you are wrong
you supported
on
the
that
border
statement.
wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted
There
for
was
7
a
combat
lot
measures.
of
This
Latinos
is what
who
you
were
said. Then you serve as vice
murdered
president in an administration that
after
deported
in
3 million
the
people,
early 20th
the most
century
ever in
in
US
Texas
history.
and
Do
in
you
California.
do anything to prevent those deportations? I mean, you've been asked this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again.
Pretty sure there was more killed in
Are
those
you
two
prepared to say
stances.
tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportation?
The NRA is starting to fall apart.
Well,
Mosem.
Latinos should
It
look
really
at
is. I don't support. I don't.
This president to
I don't have a
the president
membership
we
with
have
them.
Is outrageous. Number one, we didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families. We didn't do all of those things. Number one.
Them.
Number two, by the time this is the president who came along with the DACA program. No one had ever done that before. This is the president who sent legislation to the desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million undocumented in the United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him. What I would do as president is several more things because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change the order that the president just changed, saying women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th anniversary
Because personal relationship, escaping a personal relationship is not an appropriate asylum.
Let's put pressure on the past, the Violence Against Women Act now. But
you didn't answer the question.
Well,
the question
I hate to be that person, but personal relationships
the president
aren't a proper asylum seeking.
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro, would you want to respond to Vice
look,
President Biden?
you know,
and let me put this in context, because your party controlled the White House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes.
But
in the
I mean,
Senate. So
I just
willing, for instance,
I want to
give up
make
DACA,
I want to let people
or give up
understand
a path
that
to citizenship, or even agree to
it's
build
just
a wall
my
legalize
personal beliefs. A
10.5
woman being
billion
beaten by her
undocumented
husband or boyfriend is horrible.
Jorge, thank
and
you
it
very
should
much
stop.
for that question.
But that's not a proper
look, I agree that Barack
asylum
Obama was very different from Donald Trump.
petition.
Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating and fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, and Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there, that's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer to any questions. I mean,
Vice President Biden, you have
So Castro, are you saying that you endorse the use of drones to assassinate people on the other side of the world?
In early April, to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because
Just
I'm not
asking.
afraid
You were
of
there.
Donald
You were
Trump on this issue.
you were
I'm
one of
not
his
gonna
secretaries.
backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn and have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House. And we're going to pass immigration reform within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
You know, they haven't taken a commercial break yet.
I stand with Barack Obama
Yeah, he was.
all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
Okay, Senator Warren, hundreds of children have been separated from their parents at the border. And recently in Mississippi, we saw the largest immigration raid in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented immigrants. So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker, immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand legal immigration and create a pathway to citizenship.
There was a lot,
for
Mosen.
our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not a system.
Here, Warren, I will explain it to you.
And it is not
Because
our values.
the cartels are not above using women and children. Terrorists are not above using women and children to do what they need to do. They aren't.
Help from people in Central America.
Yes, Ducky. He was in the. He made all the Fast and Furious movies.
We need to help establish and
this is part of the issues that they're not looking at. They're not taking an objective view upon it, which is people that want to do bad, whether it's the drug cartels, whether it's a terrorist organization, whether it's another crime syndicate, or even foreign
from putting kids in cages to limiting asylum,
foreign secret police and stuff like that are not above using women and children.
1 million immigrants enter the U.S.
So yes, you do have to screen women and children and grandmas as much as you do anybody else.
Should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me or?
Mr. Yang.
Already said it. Okay.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we.
There's a bigger issue to that whole thing too, Mosen. There's been a huge influx of people coming from Central and South America that have overflowed the previous installations, so they have to build up newer and bigger installations. But while they're trying to build up those places, and they're losing money left and right because people are using them as a scapegoat for all things, they have to put them in these tents. They have to have them in these
we have to compete
camps.
for talent, and I am the opposite.
Where are they
going to
go?
In many ways, he says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations. If we lose that, we lose something integral to our continued success, and that is where I would lead as president.
Alcalde Pitt, tengo una pregunta para usted.
I think he said the right thing. I think Yang said the right thing.
8 out of 10 Latinos in Texas were another mass shooting targeting them. This is according to a new Univision poll. President Trump has called Mexican immigrants rapists and killers.
No,
tried to ban Muslims
he
from
called
entering the country
MS-13
and separate
rapists
the
and
children
killers.
from their parents. His supporters have chanted, "Build the wall and send her back." Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo. The only people, though, who actually buy into this president's hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any.
Yeah,
We have an
exactly.
opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform. In my community, a
Pretty sure
group of
Indonesia.
conservative Republicans rallied
Trying to think who
around
else
an
was
individual,
still
a
allowed to
beloved
come in.
local individual who was deported when he went into ICE to try to get his paperwork sorted out because they never thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow, and it's why part of my plan for revitalizing the economies of rural America includes community renewal visas that would allow cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason that South Bend is growing right now, after years of shrinking, is immigration. It's one of the reasons.
Well, that's because your factories in South Bend have been
city-issued municipal IDs,
basically
so that
shut
people,
down.
Regardless of immigration status, in our city had the opportunity to have the benefits
People are going to
of
leave
identification.
when their
we
jobs
have an opportunity to actually get something done. But we cannot allow this to continue to be the same debate with the same arguments and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American
he was actually just talking to
around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values.
He's only said he's going to give people $1,000 a month.
Argue
once,
for us
twice.
to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted. In an interview 8 months ago, you were asked what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said, I don't know. Do you have an answer now?
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays, but I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America.
That's true.
In the image of El Paso, Texas, one of the safest cities in the United States of America. Safe, not despite the fact that we are a city of immigrants, safe because we are a city of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. I will lead an effort to make sure that we rewrite our immigration laws in that way. Never cage another child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7 lives lost under our care.
Mosen, I'm hoping so.
But also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family or to work a job, that we have been part of deporting people, hundreds of thousands, just in the Obama administration alone, who posed no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats,
except they broke the law to get here.
We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country.
Gracias.
And extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers, and ensure that we have a legal, safe, orderly system to come to this country and add to our greatness here.
Thank you, George.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a
but
quick
you
break.
just
When we
basically
come
said
back,
that everybody who
national
didn't
security
take the
foreign
legal,
policy,
safe,
the impact on American jobs and U.S. troops.
lifeless auto, apparently. All right, I'm going to take a real quick break. While they're taking a real quick break, I need more coffee. I will be right back.
10 candidates, one critical night. And now, right after the debate wraps, the candidates step into the spin room for their first live reaction to the debate. What will they say now? And what will happen next? The ABC News Democratic Debate Post Show breaks live right after the debate, tonight streaming on ABC News Live. ABC News, straightforward.
Ismael? David.
Over ground zero from Hurricane Michael.
You can see just home after home.
David, thanks for meeting you. This was your view.
My favorite view.
Thank you very much.
Okay, imagine the morning. I'm talking about a good morning. Imagine starting your day off with friends. What's better than that? You know, like the crazy smart friend who always keeps you in the know. The friend with a huge heart and smile who just makes everything better. Imagine hearing from people who open your eyes and your heart. Imagine knowing what's coming next in the day ahead. Well, I get to live this each morning together with you. Imagine that. How blessed am I? And that's what makes it such a good morning, America.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live, the 24/7 streaming news source from ABC News. Breaking news, live events, streaming nonstop. Original breakthrough storytelling from ABC News, National Geographic, ESPN, and it's all designed differently for you to stream straight to any screen whenever you want. Free. ABC News Live. Stream it now or anytime on Roku, Hulu, Facebook, and abcnews.com.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Welcome back to Houston. I'm Devin Dwyer. We're behind the scenes here at the Democratic debate at Texas Southern University. And I'm here with former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, Chief of Staff to President Obama. Somebody that knows Joe Biden very well. Give us your rating of his performance so far, Rahm.
Well, I think Joe Biden brought energy. That was his first, hurdle he had to clear. He brought passion to this effort. And I also thought he brought a nice, it was a gesture to Beto, the way he handled, obviously, what happened in El Paso. So on that level, he is engaged. And I also think he did something very smart. On healthcare, he made Bernie his foil, not Elizabeth Warren, which was smart in that effort in that time. I also got to say this. I thought Amy, Kamala, and Beto all had their moments. I think the person that got hurt so far is Castro. He looked mean.
He looked petty, some people were saying on Twitter, but we will see. There's
that.
still about halfway through this debate, so a long way to go, Ron. Thank you so much for that. Let's check in with some folks here at Texas Southern University who are watching this just steps from where we are here on campus. That's where Pooja Lodia is with our affiliate KTRK. She's there with the students. Hey, Pooja, what's the reaction so far?
Well, Devin, we are seeing a lot of excitement, a lot of cheers out here. Actually, almost 2,000 students registered to be right here at TSU's official debate watch party. I would say the biggest cheers we've seen would be anytime any one of the candidates have brought up historically black colleges and universities. We've also seen standing ovations for many of the times that those candidates have brought up former President Barack Obama. I want to go real quickly to a couple of students. Quick, tell me which candidates have impressed you the most tonight.
So far, Bernie Sanders and just his proposal for Medicare for all. So that just really stood out to me.
Sure. And what about you?
I would have to agree, Bernie Sanders. I definitely believe that it's imperative for all citizens to have access to reliable and affordable health care.
Great. Thank you so much. And schools and classes were actually canceled today. Again, a lot of excitement and a lot of pride in being right here at TSU. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Pooja Lodia with our affiliate KTRK there with the students here at Texas Southern University, the first historically black college and university to host one of these debates. A lot of excitement here. We've seen clashes on healthcare, immigration, racism, and there at the end on the president's legacy, vice president's legacy, rather, with President Obama. Much more ahead here in Texas. Stay with us on ABC News Live. Our full political team will be standing by after the debate, and we'll send you back now to the debate hall. The debate continues here right now.
All right, I'm back. Who fell in?
Dr. Ismail? David.
I'm just, oh man. Sorry, my brother and I got into a little discussion about some of the stuff they've said. I am not happy that Kamala Harris basically said she's going to ignore the Constitution as president. And nobody should be willing to give up the Constitution to a president.
Live from Texas Southern University in Houston,
No.
the Democratic debate.
We want to turn now to national security and the foreign policy issue that has such a direct impact here at home. The U.S. relationship with China, trade.
No, we don't need to call the Secret Service.
We received more than
Who needs the Constitution? Am I right?
Viewers want to know how all of you are going to handle these tariffs. And Mr. Yang, let me begin with you. Would you repeal the tariffs on your first day in office? And if so, would you risk losing leverage in our trade relationship?
What's up, John? How you doing? Thank you for the sticker.
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal. Because right now, the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO of mine was in China recently,
I hate to say it,
and he
but the
said
subsidies going to
US intellectual property on
going to Iowa farmers need to stop too.
Per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are
Stop
real.
producing in China.
We have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard
part of the reason why
trade
China
policy
holds
that has had
all these
victims on both sides.
intellectual properties that they are making forgeries of is because the majority of those things are originally produced there.
Mayor Pete, let me take that question. Let me take that question to you, because if you've seen President Trump's tweets, he says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take
I agree, Mosin.
advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy. You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to happen in, like, April? It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that happens on the international stage, people take note. Not just our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on its plans. And when that happens, there are
you have to be
serious
35 years old to run for
we
president.
saw it at the G7, the leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change. And there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is,
Pete,
this is a moment
no, part of the
where
problem
leadership
is
needed
that
more
the United
than
States is
ever.
still
Whether
leading
it's
the
in
entire
Hong
world
Kong, where
in
those
cutting back in our
protesters for
carbon
democracy
emissions
need
by
to
switching
know
to
they
natural
have a
gas,
friend in
by
the United
doing
States,
carbon capture,
or anywhere around
by
the world where increasingly
wanting to
we
push
see
more nuclear,
dictators
while
pulling their weight over.
countries
The world
like
needs
China and
America,
India
but
are
it
pumping
can't
up their
be just
carbon
any America.
by
It has to
producing
be
thousands and thousands of coal
I would
power
have
plants.
a strategy that would include the tariffs as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on
So
right now is a
why
president who has reduced
should
the
we
entire
go and
China
negotiate with
challenge
people
into a
that aren't
question
willing to
of
change
tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down
at all?
on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
That's
Senator Klobuchar, you
just
actually
where I'm
supported
standing
the
on that.
tariffs on steel.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans that are mounting up in bins all over the Midwest, in my state of Minnesota and in Iowa. So what I think we need to do is to go back
They
to
mount
the
up all the time,
negotiating table.
though,
That's what
Paul
I would
Bacher,
do. I wouldn't have put all these
because
tariffs in
the
place,
farmers are
and I wouldn't
subsidized
have had a
anyways.
trade policy where on August
Like-
1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th he cuts it in half. A week later he says he's going to reduce taxes.
Because she's
The day
kind of
after that,
popular,
he says
Toad.
he's
A lot
gonna
of
do it.
Minnesotans really like
The
her.
leaders of the world are watching this, and it undermines our strength as a nation. And yes, we want fair trade, but we must work with the rest of the world. And he has made a mockery of focused trade policy, which I think means enforcement, like we've done in northern Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do more on that,
Yeah,
so
Mos, and
that
that too.
our workers can benefit. So we are importing, exporting goods, and making sure that is a competitive policy, where our goal is that we are making things, inventing things, and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the previous debates identified China as the most serious national security threat to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying there. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war is hurting American families. As Senator Klobuchar said, 300,000
and a lot of that
American
corn,
jobs.
or a lot of
It's
people got into
estimated that it's
corn
cost
for the
$600
ethanol
to the average American
to create
family.
ethanol.
Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So when I become president, I would immediately begin to negotiate with China to ratchet down that trade war. We have leverage there. I also believe,
yes,
though,
Ducky,
that
your people.
we need to return to
The
a
children of
leader
the
when it
corn
comes to
in
things like
Nebraska.
human rights. We have millions of Uyghurs, for instance, in China.
I think
that
maybe a
right
little
now
bit.
are being imprisoned and mistreated. And in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down. We have leverage in that discussion.
Senator Warren, let me bring you in on this.
Why do you
this
bring
conversation.
Korea
President
in?
Obama
They
signed the
don't.
Trans-Pacific
We don't
Partnership.
trade
In
with
part,
Korea,
it was designed
North
to rein
Korea.
in China, to bring China in to some kind of regulation. What do you think?
And Castro, I'm pretty sure the president you worked for also tried to talk to Kim Jong-un.
For decades. And it has been broken because it works for giant multinational corporations and not for much of anyone else.
No.
These are giant corporations
With South Korea, yes.
that, shoot, if they can save a nickel by moving a job to a foreign country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. And yet, for decades now, who's been whispering in the ears of our trade negotiators? Who has shaped our trade policy? It's been the giant corporations. It's been their lobbyists and their executives. The way we change our trade policy in America is first, the procedures.
Because it's the natural progression of humanity to move from being a great producer
at the table.
of goods
at the table. I want to negotiate with
to being a great producer of ideas.
And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one. The leverage, are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the
Makes
American
perfect sense,
market.
Nebraska.
That means that we have the
Genius
capacity
Robin.
to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American consumers, then you've got to raise your
one of my
standards.
problems with this
You've
is
gotta
that
raise your
they're
labor
focusing
standards.
so
You've gotta
much
raise your
on
environmental
trying to
standards.
ensure
So our
that
companies
the production
can
level
compete
in the
on a
United
level
States
playing
for
field. We can
goods,
use trade
other than
not to
other than
undermine
farm goods.
American
Farm goods,
workers
the
and
United
not
States
to
will
undermine
always
American
lead because
farms
we
and
have
not to
a
undermine
bunch
small
of farm
businesses in
land.
this country. We can use trade to help build
We have
a
the
stronger
most
economy.
unpopulated
Senator Harris, how would your
land
trade
to
policy
be
differ from
used.
President Obama's?
Well, first of all, I have
No, we don't, Becky.
criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is
But
that
the
we've got
natural
a guy in the
progression of
White
people,
House
we
who's
went
been
from
erratic on trade
being
policy.
an agrarian
He conducts trade
culture
policy by tweet, frankly, born out of his
to an
fragile
industrial
ego.
nation.
It has resulted in
Now we are
farmers in
moving away
Iowa
from an industrial
with soybeans rotting in
nation
bins, looking
to
at
a
bankruptcy.
technology-based
When we look at
nation,
this issue,
which is what
my
we
trade
should be
policy
doing.
Under a Harris administration is always going to be about saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a protectionist Democrat.
Birthplace of basketball.
Look,
Oh my
we need
goodness.
to sell our
Kansas.
stuff. And that means we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that allow that to
American
happen.
steel is
You
still
asked
by far
earlier
the
about
best steel in
China.
the world.
It's a complicated relationship.
The problem is
We have
everything
to
else that
hold
we produce
China
here has
accountable.
started slowly
They
falling
steal our
apart.
products, including our intellectual property. They dump substandard products into our economy.
No, they can't, John.
They need to be held accountable. We also need to partner with China on climate and the crisis that presents. We need to partner with China on the issue of North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this.
We have a
Donald
partner.
Trump,
Japan.
in office on trade policy. You know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz. You know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
I mean, he was average height.
Okay. I'm not even going to take the bait, Senator Harris, but I am going to take this to Senator.
She just made fun of George Snuffleupagus' height.
Reason why in the last 45 years, the average American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago. And one of the reasons is that for decades we have had disastrous trade policies. And I got to say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe and I strongly disagree on trade. I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over $4 million.
He might not make it through the
good-paying
debates,
jobs.
John.
And what happened is people who had those jobs ended up getting other
Welcome back,
jobs,
Leslie.
making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump
Because they didn't
thinks
go to
that
get retrained.
Trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere.
Oh no,
who are losing
Zeruto,
billions right
this is
now
I've
because
been
of
enjoying
Trump's
watching this.
policy.
Although some of the stuff
A
they have
trade
said
policy
is,
which
oh my goodness,
understands that if a company shuts
ridiculous.
down in America and goes
You got
abroad,
lonely. Well,
and
you're
then
welcome here,
thinks they're
Zeruto.
going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, he invoked your name.
Yeah. Well, look, we're either going to make the policy or China's going to make the rules of the road. We make up 25% of the world economy. we need another 25% to join us. And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be
Yeah, but
labor,
John, you also have to
and at the table
understand
have to be
a lot of the
environmentalists.
stuff they say
The fact of
out
the matter
loud
is,
has
China-
nothing to do with
the
what
problem
they
is the
actually
trade
try to
deficit.
do
The problem is they're stealing our
in
intellectual
office.
property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping
Oh my God,
steel
a
on us.
weekend at
That's a
Bernie's
different
with- oh
issue
my
than whether or
God.
not they're dumping agricultural products. on us. In
Could
addition
you
to that, we're in
imagine
a position
who
where
would be his
we
vice
don't
president?
set the
I think his
rules.
vice president would
We, in
be
fact, are going to
Warren,
find ourselves
and Warren
with
sitting there
China
with
setting the rules.
little
And
strings
that's
in the
why we need
back,
to
making his
organize
arms
the
go like this.
world to
Hold on, where's
take
my
on China
sunglasses?
to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round.
Sure. There's one point we're really missing on the stage right now, which
Here we go.
is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy. From trade to battling China to the global crisis.
That was
of climate
believable, right?
change, the challenges in the Middle East. He is pulling us away from our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte and Putin than he does with Merkel and Macron. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth.
No,
And our strength
Zeruto,
is
it's not.
multiplied and
The only
magnified
reason I know
when
who
we
most of these
stand
people
with
are
our
is because
allies
I
in common
like.
cause and common
This is
purpose.
what I do.
That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth. And that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn now to our troops overseas into America's longest war in Afghanistan. U.S. talks with the Taliban are dead.
Oh my
according
goodness,
to the
that gif
president.
is great.
Secret talks at Camp David have been canceled before they could happen. Many of you have weighed in on that already. So I want to move past that tonight to what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage have said you'd bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail.
I would have to
Obama wanted
look.
to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home.
My problem
And
is
said of
you have to
Afghanistan,
look
let's help
at
them reach a
the
peace settlement. It is
intelligence
time to bring our troops home in
of
your
the area.
words,
Most
starting right
Americans
now.
don't understand
Would
what
you keep that
actually
promise to bring the
happens in
troops home starting
Afghanistan.
right now with no deal with
Afghanistan is not a unified nation.
And I'll tell
There
you
are
why.
a conglomerate
What
of
we're doing
tribes
right
that
now
agree to
in
work together
Afghanistan
for the most part.
is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is
Since
not
we
helping
went
the
in
safety
and
security
took
of
over
the world.
Afghanistan,
It is not helping
we
the
upset
safety and security
whatever
of
balance they
Afghanistan.
had there
We
between the
need
tribes.
to bring our troops home. And
So
then
part
we
of the
need
problem
to
of
make a big
removing
shift.
troops from there
We cannot
is that
ask
it's going
our
to cause
military
an
to keep
issue
solving
among all the
problems
different
that cannot be
tribes over
solved
there.
militarily. We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem of terrorism as
Much
a
like the problem
worldwide
of pulling out of Iraq
and that means we need to be
too
working
early.
with all
We left a
of our
power
allies,
vacuum, and that
our
allowed
European
the
allies, our Canadian
ISIL
allies, our
agents
Asian
to
allies,
try to take
our
over.
allies in Africa and in South America. We need to work together.
One of the
to
things
root out
that the United
terrorism.
States
But we're
has
using
not
all of our
done
tools.
in
It means
in about
economic investment.
100,
It means
not 100, in
expanding
80
our
years,
diplomatic efforts instead
is
of hollowing out
when
the
we go
State
and we
Department and deliberately
do
making it
military
so we
actions in
have
these
no
countries,
eyes and ears
we don't
in
stay
many of these
anymore.
countries.
Um,
We need a foreign policy.
The
that is
reason
about
why
our
Germany
security
and Japan have
about
rebounded the way that they
leading
do
on our
is
values.
because the
Senator
United
Warren,
States
quick follow on
stayed
that,
there,
because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in
and they
Afghanistan
continued
told
to
me you can't
support
do it without
the
a deal with
rebuilding
the
of the
Taliban. You just
nation.
said
And
you
it
would.
doesn't, it's
Bring
not
them
just a
home. What if
decade.
they told
You
that?
have
Would
to
you
be
listen
there
to
for
them?
20, 30,
I
40
was
years.
in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past
Yeah.
summer. I think it may have been Senator McCain's
Our,
last
our
trip
biggest issue
before
is
he
that
was sick. And
now,
I
it's
talked
not
to
an
people.
issue.
We did.
What
We talked
the
to
difference
military
between
leaders,
now
American
and back in the
and local
40s
leaders. We talked to
is
people
the fact
on
that we
ground
have
and asked the
instantaneous
question, the same one
news,
I asked on the Senate Armed Services
which
Committee.
creates
Every time
an
one of the
opinion
generals
of the
comes
American
through.
people
Show me what winning looks like.
that are not well informed on what goes on over there, that aren't well informed on what we were getting into, and don't understand
no one can
the
is because the problems in Afghanistan
problems
are
of
not
invading
problems
nations.
that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military. I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do.
Yeah, it's
But we
generational change that
cannot
needs to
ask
happen.
them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build with our
She's one of the
allies,
few candidates
and
that
we
I
need
actually
to make
really
the whole
like.
world
I don't
safer,
agree with a
not
lot of the
keep
stuff that
troops bombing in
her
Senator
policies,
Warren, thank you.
especially
I do want to stay on this, and I want to
domestic,
turn to Mayor Buttigieg,
but
because
I
you're the
actually
only
like
veteran
Tulsi.
on this stage. You served in Afghanistan. We heard in recent
Yeah,
days
Zero.
from General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support to deal with the level of violence. If he's not even using the word withdrawal, would you put your promise to bring troops home in the first year on hold to follow the advice?
You know, I served under General Dunford, way under General Dunford in Afghanistan. And today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place.
I agree.
And so, when I am president, an authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote.
You'd
and
have
the
to
president will be required to go to
18
Congress
years old
to seek
today.
an authorization. Because if our troops can
Well, yeah,
summon the courage
Cerruto.
to go overseas,
But
at least our members
wars
of
are more
Congress will be
profitable
able to do
when they're
is
not
summon
your
the
country
courage
that you're
to take a vote on
that's
whether
at
they
war.
ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president right now who seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through Scotland just so people can stay at his hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform, is do not let these men and women
Mosin,
down.
I wouldn't say
This
all of them
president
are.
is doing
I know
exactly
some really
that.
good officers.
I will
One of
not.
them was my father,
Mayor Buttigieg,
or is my
thank
father.
you. I want to turn to Vice
One of them
President
is my
Biden,
brother, but he's a
because
warrant
the
officer,
concerns
so
about
they're not real
any
officers.
possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were vice president, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign
What saves
trail,
us
quote,
money?
I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq. There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq.
Yeah, because you
then had to
also
send thousands of
handcuffed
troops back
the
in.
soldiers that were over there.
Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
I mean, I
No,
don't
it
know,
wasn't
John.
wrong to pull up. I'm going to answer an Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service.
I'm not a
I've
big
been
fan
out
of
of
using
Afghanistan, I think more than
drones
anybody on this it's an
in
open
that
secret.
kind of capacity. I
Been
don't have a
reported
problem
long time
using them
ago,
as
George, that I
surveillance,
was
but
opposed
using
to
them
the
as
search in Afghanistan.
weapons
The whole
is
purpose
not
of going to
a
Afghanistan was
moral.
to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It
I have moral issues
cannot
with.
be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties.
As
the
surveillance
three
and
provinces.
counter-surveillance, I'm
In
all
the
for
east,
it.
They're not any part of it. The economies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counter-terrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases, insist that Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from.
Don't remind me
to
about
move
that,
against
Mosin.
what we
That makes
know.
me so
we
angry.
Don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that
cost of upkeep is what they're
I should
saying.
have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done.
I don't know, but I'm
chemical
pretty sure
weapons or nuclear weapons.
his
And
health
when
care
that
provided
happened,
to him by
he
being a
went ahead
senator
and
is
went
paid for it,
anyway without any of
Zeruto.
that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in, was that in fact we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, etc. And it was later when we came into office, the president turned to me and said, Joe, when they said we got a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, Joe will organize this, get the troops home. My son spent a year in Iraq, and I understand and we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted, was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving.
No,
because the
Kurds hate the Shia, and the Shia hate the Kurds.
Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw in Iraq when the troops came out. ISIS filled that vacuum. What do you make of people out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11?
Yeah, and the Sunni don't like anybody
Let me
either.
just comment on something that the Vice President said. You talked about the big mistake in Iraq and the surge. The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake, and one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq. I voted against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I mean, I kind of, had the feeling that there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all three of Trump's military budgets. I don't think we have to spend $750 billion a year on the military when we don't even know who our enemy is. I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change. Bring it together in fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a planet, as a global community, will work together to help countries around the world rebuild their struggling economies and do everything that we can to rid the world of terrorism. But dropping bombs on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
Senator Sanders, thank you. I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the stage, as you know, when we talk about troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with the Vice President who was in the Situation Room, with senators who are on the Senate Armed Services, the Foreign Relations Committees, with an Afghanistan veteran who is on the stage tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be Commander-in-Chief?
I've signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state of continuous armed conflict for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good at rebuilding countries. And if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico. We've spent trillions of dollars to unclear benefits, lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades. I would lead
we did a good job with Germany and Japan.
With restraint and judgment. What the American people want
France,
is simply a president who has
Italy,
the right values and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way. And that's what I would do as president.
Mr. Yang.
That's the one thing I've wondered as well, Zeruto.
Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so let's begin. Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why? And what are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua?
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can make and create their own future. In terms of democratic socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right. I believe that the United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family and medical leave. I believe that every worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand the trade union movement. I happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country. You got a handful of billionaires controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an economy that works for all of us, not 1%. That's my understanding of democratic socialism.
Secretary Garcia, you wanted to say a quick response, 45 seconds.
Sure, thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator. And what we need to do is to, along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections. And also here
pretty
in the
sure
United
in
States,
2011,
TPS to
Bernie said that Venezuela was the place to go.
Has failed to do for all of his big talk about supporting the Venezuelan American community. He has failed. I will not. I also believe that we need to do things like a 21st century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to make the dangerous journey to the United States. And under my administration, we're going to put renewed focus on Latin America. It makes sense. They're our neighbors, and we have a lot of things in common. It also makes sense that because
it was already being exploited. The thing is the way
strengthening those. The United States
the way it
partnerships in Latin America.
The way it always goes is that there's a surplus of good,
let me ask you about Brazil,
and then
after the recent fires
everything starts catching up. Then corruption seeps in, and then it's consistent, and it's been a consistent thing.
2014, that's obviously
the USSR, when it first started, when the Bolsheviks took over, there was a great belief in what the socialist Soviet Republic could do inside the country. But then you had people like Lenin and Stalin, and
I want to translate that into Spanish.
They were so fearful of losing power that they instead turned to dictatorship. Same thing with China for a long time.
Farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation in the agriculture industry.
For me, it seems like it's more of a natural progression of things.
Kind of corporate consolidation.
Then it's a
this factory farming
outlier because it happens all the time. Because people
you see independent family farmers
who become people who are not used to having that kind of power becoming extremely powerful tend to be corrupted by that power.
Stage.
It's that age-old saying, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's true.
And we didn't say
it's one of the reasons why the United States was designed the way it was to ensure that we wouldn't have somebody take over the government
They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as we, as a country, understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this outrageous increased militarism, that we also make sure that we stand up for the people that stood for us. We
The VA and the military budgets are
It's about time we make this a better
from two
home
different
for our bravest.
budgets.
Congressman O'Rourke,
Just wanted to clear that all out for everybody, because they continue to put VA care inside of the military budget, but they're two separate issues when it comes to the budget.
And we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful action will you take to reverse the effect of climate change? And can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Yeah, no, I
Yes,
agree.
we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because this is the very future of our planet and our ability for our children and grandchildren to be able to survive on it. We will make sure that we get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than the year 2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas, with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger.
I have a problem with what he just said
than ever. We're also going to make
because
sure
there
that
were
we
different
free
areas of the
ourselves from
city
dependence
that I
on
live in
fossil fuels and embrace
that were hit by
renewable
different
wind and
500-year
solar
floods.
technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skilled,
It was different
high-wage
areas of the
jobs
city.
come along
The
with
city
that.
of Houston
And we're
is
gonna
one of
pay
the
farmers
largest by
for the
land
environmental
mass
services that
in the
they want to
entire
provide.
country.
Planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using
My area of
no-till
town,
farming,
down in
regenerative
Fort Bend
agriculture
area,
to
was one
pull
of the
carbon out
places
the air
affected by a
and to drive
500-year
it and
flood
sequester it
about
into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet
3 or
this
4 years
challenge, and
ago.
bring everyone
And
into
then
the
you had
solution.
Harvey, which caused a 500-year flood in a different part of town. And then there was another flood that caused another 500-year flood in another town, or another part of town. So when he says that the city of Houston has different areas of the city of Houston have been hit by 500-year floods.
Flooding in Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will allow us to talk about this in a different way.
I've lived in
and
Houston
get
for
it
most
done.
of my life.
On day one,
flooding happens
will get
here.
us back into
We're
the
built on a
International
swamp.
Climate Change Agreement.
We all know it.
On day 2, I will bring back the clean
Do I
power
think that the
rules
government
President
should
Obama
fix
had worked
some
on.
of the
On day
drainage
3,
systems?
I will bring
Yes,
back
I
the
do.
gas mileage
I think that they
standard.
should be
You can
fixed.
do all that without Congress, which is good.
But to
On day
use
4,
this city
5, and
as
6, I
a
will, working with Congress and mayors
thermometer
and business
for
people all over
climate
the country,
change because
introduce
of
sweeping
3 floods that have
legislation
happened in
to get
a
at that
what I'm trying to
2050
think. Hold on, let me see.
And on day 7, you're supposed to
Let me
rest,
see the
but I
exact
won't.
area.
Senator
This is
Warren.
what we need to do if we're going to get at climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator Warren, should American foreign policy be based around the principle of climate change?
Yes.
10,000 square
Every
miles.
front on climate change. It is the threat
10,000
to
square
every living
miles.
thing on this planet, and we are running out of time. Every time the scientists go back, they say we have less and less time than we thought we had. But that means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those 3, will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need to help around the world to clean, but understand this one more time. Why doesn't it happen? As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old. When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I'm really scared. And when I've been in
John,
the United
part of the
States
problem
Senate
is no
for
matter
the
what we
last
do here in the
2.5
U.S.,
years, and I look at
2 of the
our
biggest
counterparts,
polluters in the world
Republicans in
are
United
China and
States
India.
Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see.
One of the
but it's a
biggest
lack of
issues is how are we
courage.
going to convince China and India,
This is an issue that,
who
yes,
just
it represents an
pumped out,
existential
I'm
threat.
pretty
It is
sure,
also
1,000
something
different
we can
coal
do
plants
something about. This is a
They just
problem
built
that was
them,
created by
like brand
human
new,
behaviors.
built coal plants
And we can change
in those two
our
countries
behaviors
that have
in a way that saves our planet.
half the
I've seen it
population in the
happen
freaking world.
In California, I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States.
I'm all
second only to
for
United
the
States
U.S.
Department of
moving
Justice.
to a
I took on
cleaner,
the big oil companies, and we
cleaner
saw
environment.
progress.
I'm all for that.
If any of you have been to Los Angeles 20 years
Well,
ago,
that
you'll
too,
remember
Zerto. They're moving their
that
plants
sky
to
was
rural
brown.
areas,
You go
and
there
their
now,
current
the sky
plan
is
that
blue,
was in
and you
the
know why?
what is it,
Because
the
leader just
Fukuyama
decided to lead,
Accord or
and we
whatever that
took on
accord
these
was,
big fossil fuel
was that they
companies.
were
We have some of the
they would
most
continue to
important and
increase
strongest laws in the
until
country.
2060,
And
and then they'll
difference.
peak.
My point being,
And
I've
then they'll
done it
start to
before,
draw
and I
back.
will lead
Like, that's
as
what they've
president
said
on
that they
this
would do.
issue
India
because
said very much
we
the same
have no
thing.
time. The clock is ticking,
Thank you.
but
And
we need courage and we need courageous
But like I said, I'm
We
all
can
for it.
get
We
this
need
done.
the U.S.,
Mr. Yang.
which has already moved more and more to natural gas, which is a lot cleaner than coal.
On what Elizabeth said, why are we losing
We've started
to
to
the
move
fossil
to
fuel
carbon
companies?
capture.
To the gun lobby and
We
the
need to
NRA?
produce more and
the
more
answer is
nuclear
this.
power.
We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun
And
by money
also
and corporate interests.
do some
Now, everyone here has
wind
a plan
and
to
solar.
try and curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money finds a way.
There's
Money
a
will
reason.
find its way back
There's
in.
a reason
So
why.
what is the answer?
Sorry,
The answer
Andrew's
is
going to talk
wash
about
the money out with people-powered money. My proposal is that we give
every American
100
$1,000
democracy dollars that you can only give to
100
candidates
democracy?
and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way we will win. And as someone running
I'm
for
all
president,
for
I'll tell
getting rid of
you,
plastic
there's the
bags
people
that we
on
see
one
in
side and
grocery
the money
stores.
on the other. The only way for us to win
But
is if we bring them
currently,
together.
the options to move away from plastic bottles, which are majority are recyclable, is not recyclable.
Houston, the school district is
It
facing
does,
yet
Cerruto. It
another
really
year
does.
of spending cuts. Like schools across
Well,
the
look
country,
at the stuff that's going on. I think it's in San Francisco. Their paper straws that they have to use are non-recyclable,
You're the most vocal
and they're not made
proponent
from
on this stage for charter schools.
recycled material.
You said that Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public
Yeah,
schools?
but then you have to get into the cost of
clear,
cans and
I am
glass
pro
versus
good
plastic.
school.
I mean, there's a reason
I've
why
got a
soda
kid,
companies have
one
moved
of
from
my, little boys
glass
just started
bottles
public
to
school
plastic
last
bottles.
week, and I was not there because I was running for president. So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. We need to lighten up the emphasis on standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our
I'm
character.
all for that. I'm all for what he said before that.
But here's the big one.
We also
The
need to
data
be able to
clearly
get rid
shows
of
that
teachers that are
65
not
to 70%
good.
of our students' outcomes are determined outside of the school. We're talking about time spent at home with the parents, words read to them when they're young, stress levels in the
And
house,
the way the
income,
school systems
type
are
of
set up to
neighborhood.
judge a
We're
teacher
putting
based
money
off
into
of
schools, and educators know this. We're
their
saying you're
students'
100%
success
responsible for
is
educating our
inappropriate
kids,
as well.
but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
Mayor Buttigieg, 45 seconds to respond.
Step one is appoint a Secretary of Education who actually believes in public education. I believe in public education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social and emotional learning. Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more. And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession, respect teachers the way we do soldiers, and pay them more like the way we do doctors.
Senator Warren, to use Mr. Yang's term, are you just jumping into bed with teachers' unions?
You know, I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher. I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in 2nd grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this.
I mean, she does.
Money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment.
So then make
have a Secretary
taxes
of Education who has
that
been
support
a
public
school
schools
teacher.
optional.
I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10
Yes,
of
no,
1%
nobody's behind me.
in this country.
Damn.
That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in
That's okay,
this
Ducky.
country.
Thank you,
Raise the wages of every
I said,
childcare
she
worker
said
and
that
preschool
make
teacher
sure
in
that
this
the
country.
money going to public schools stays in public schools. And I said, okay, then let me make my my tax that goes to public schools optional.
Not just where the money comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds to respond.
My 1st grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God rest her soul, attended my law school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered
Myself
in this campaign
I have
deal
no
with
children
this,
currently.
which will be the first in the nation.
I don't have any
federal
children that I know of.
investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500.
My taxes are going to support the public
Right now
school.
in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own
But that,
pocket
see,
to help
John,
pay
that
for
was the
school
thing about
supplies.
school choice too.
And that is wrong.
Was that they
I
were
also want to
choosing
talk about
where
we
their
are
tax
here at
money
TSU
goes.
and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have, as part of my proposal,
But if
that
I
we will
if I
put
don't
$2
want my
trillion
child to
into
step foot
investing in
into a
our
public school, if I want to
HBCUs
homeschool
for
them,
teachers,
if I want to send them to a private school,
because, one, as a proud graduate of a historically black college and university, I will say,
yes, Doug.
I will say that it is our
I said homeschool.
HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you, Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, there are 32% more
College
likely
is
to
not
go
the
to
end all be all.
college. So when we talk about investing in our
I hate
public
saying it.
education
I hate
system,
going
it is
against
at
that.
the source
I think
of
that
so
college can be
much.
very
When
important,
we
especially
fix
if you
it,
are deciding
that
to
will
go
fix
into a
so
field
many
that
other
really
things.
needs
We
college.
must invest in the
Thank
future
you,
of our children.
Senator
And I
Sanders.
strongly
But
believe
college
you can
isn't the
judge
end
a
all be all.
society based on how it treats its children, and we are
You don't,
failing
Leslie.
on this issue.
Guess what? You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world, and yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs.
The
to
highest
support
child poverty
themselves,
rate
which is why under my legislation,
using the
we
American
move to see
poverty
that every
scale.
teacher in America
Like,
makes at least
this
$60,000 a
is
year.
part of the problem with his
What we
statement
will also
is that
do
he is using the
not only have
American scale for
universal
poverty
pre-K, we will make public
to
colleges and
judge how many
universities
people
and
in the United States are
HBCUs
poverty
debt
compared to each
free.
individual's nation of where their
And what
poverty
we
levels
will
are.
also do, because this is an
The poorest of the
incredible
poor in this
burden
country
on millions and millions of young
are still richer
who
than
did
some of
nothing wrong
people in
except try
most
to
other
get the
countries.
education they need.
They
We are gonna
really,
cancel
really are.
all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
And
Thank
we
you,
are
Senator.
going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Vice President, I want to come to you and talk to you about inequality in schools and race. In a conversation about how to deal with segregation in schools back in 1975, you told a reporter, I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago. You said that some 40 years ago.
I agree with it.
But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Well, they have to deal with look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position where, look, we talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend, from $15 to $45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000 level. Number two, make sure that we bring into the help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have one school psychologist for every 1,500 kids in America today. It's crazy. The teachers are retired. I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does in fact have 3-, 4-, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to help, they don't know quite what to do. Play the radio, make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone, make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there. There's so much no, I'm going to go like the rest of them do, twice over. Because here's the deal. The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro.
Yes,
Maduro.
Buttsicle.
Number two,
record player through the phone.
Talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $740 million to see to it those three countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered.
You just gave money to corrupt governments to continue their corruption.
Well, that's quite a lot. You know,
I'm sorry.
I grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated. Right. Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED, and healthcare opportunities, and those things that truly ensure that the entire family can prosper. Those are the types of things that we need to do, in addition to lifting up our public schools. You asked a second ago about charter schools. Look, it is a myth that charter schools are better than public schools. They're not. And so,
thank you, Secretary.
While I'm not categorically against charter schools, I would require more transparency and accountability from them than is required right now.
Senator Booker, coming to you now. It was 65 years ago this year that the Supreme Court outlawed racial segregation in public schools. Yet for millions of students of color today, segregation remains a reality. Non-white districts typically receive $2,200 less per student than those in white districts. This means older books, less access to computers, and often worse outcomes. What is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations.
It is,
on the stage that,
see, that's the problem, is that they have the government has stepped in and said that if your school does not perform at a certain level, we're taking away some of your funding.
Who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility.
Yeah, I'm not happy with that either, Zeruto. I think No Child Left Behind was the worst freaking idea.
A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And
I hate the use of standardized testing because it doesn't test.
Charter schools, but dagnabbit, we
it doesn't test properly. You are giving an advantage to somebody like myself who tests well. I know how to take tests, I know how to look at tests, and I do well on tests. But it doesn't do well for somebody who also knows the information, just gets anxiety when they're going to take a test, or they have other testing problems. Oh, I refuse to do homework, Mosin. Homework is one of the worst things for somebody who excels at school.
Vice President, of overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago, just in my lifetime.
And they talk about segregated neighborhoods, and I'm going to use my.
And more than just that, my kids are not only.
I'm going to use the city of Houston because I know the city of Houston.
And the challenges of underfunded
a lot of the reason why the neighborhoods are segregated is not because it's forced segregation. It's because the communities that build in those areas,
you'll know this is a national problem because there's over 3,000
people are less likely to expand and intermix with other groups. Right down the street from my house is Bel Air, which is a huge Asian population, Eastern Asian population. A lot of people that come from Korea, from China, from Japan, like there's a Vietnam, Thailand, like a huge Asian population over there. Down the road in Sugar Land, there's a huge Indian from India population, and it just people tend to group themselves with people that they have. They're culturally alike. It's just human nature to do that. They're not being forced into these neighborhoods. It's not like, hey, you're the wrong skin tone, go across town. It's just that's where the people tend to go to.
Tonight streaming on ABC News Live. ABC News, straightforward.
That's just my personal experience, and that's how I know the city of Houston is, because I live here. I go to Bel Air all the time and go get some, boba, or I go down to Sugar Land and get some good Indian and Himalayan food.
Biggest news stories of the day. Inside all the details, the backstory.
Yeah, and they'll tell you that themselves, that they feel more comfortable living in those areas.
The daily news podcast from ABC News. It's like no other news podcast out there. Even the critics agree.
Here in KC, we have neighborhoods
on Apple Podcasts.
Okay, imagine the morning.
I'm going to mute this because this is commercials. Here's a large white population. There's also an age. That's just communities tend to build like that, though. They do. I can tell you if I wanted to move to, Bel Air, if I wanted to move to, what is the freaking name of that part of town where all the football players live? If I wanted to move to Montrose, I could do it. I'm not forced to live on this side of town. If I wanted to move to the 3rd Ward, I could. Although I'd be looked weird there. People would look at me strange. 3rd Ward is where Texas Southern is, by the way. It's just, I don't know. They bring up points, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that they've narrowed in on is pretty, what is the word? They're half-truths. Yeah. Dude, I go to the more Hispanic areas of towns. That's where I go get the best freaking fajita marinada and taco or carne marinada, because I know where to go. Although I have to go to HEB to get lengua, so I'm gonna take a real quick break and refill my coffee. I will be right back. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Directly to Trump, which is what people want.
Yeah, impressive start.
Man, Cory Booker has had a couple laugh nights. I think everybody is doing a really good job today. I am very impressed with this field, and I think what we're seeing is people shine on issues that they are great at. And so you're seeing, Biden and talk about his history. I know he got tripped up a bit. He's finding his way back. You see Warren and you see Bernie doing their thing, their tag team on Medicare for all.
Before we got to go here, I got to ask you about Julian Castro.
Yes.
Going hard at Joe Biden. It's
yes.
getting getting a bit of blowback on Twitter.
Well,
Do you think there was a fair attack?
I don't think it's fair. I mean, we are preparing for someone who's going to take on Trump. Trump is not going to be nice. And I think at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're preparing this guy for a rough and tumble thing. And to say to him, oh, you don't remember what you just said is a fair, assessment. I'm all about civility, but I'm also about this is our test for the real competitor. Trump is not going to be nice. He is going to come after our nominee, and we need to prepare the front runner for that. And so I understand it and I get it, but I don't.
We're going to ask Julian Castro about that exchange when he comes, hopefully, and talks to us here after the debate.
So I have a little different perspective.
You'll be here as well. Thank you for your perspective. Much more to come ahead. But I do want to check back in with Pooja Lodia with our affiliate KTRK. She's here on campus with a bunch of students. Hey, Pooja, what moments have gotten the biggest response so far there with that watch party?
Oh, we have seen a lot of clapping, a lot of cheers, really every time any one of these candidates brings up historically black colleges and universities, and also whenever any of the candidates bring up former President Barack Obama. This is obviously a big deal for the city of Houston and an even bigger deal for Texas Southern University. I do want to go to a couple of students here. Tell me, what is the #1 issue that really matters to you in this election?
Education.
Gun control. Student loans. And that is one of the ones that we've really been hearing a lot of here. A lot of students very interested to hear what these candidates have to say when it comes to student loan forgiveness. That's obviously very important. Back to you, Devin.
All right, Pooja Lodia with our friends at KTRK here tracking the student response to this debate. There is much more debate ahead. We're in the home stretch here as the moderators prepare to take their stations. Stay with us here at ABC News Live. Continuing coverage, we'll bring you back to the debate right now.
Live in Houston, the Democratic debate.
And we are back now for a final round of questions. One question for each candidate. We're going to go in reverse order from the opening statement. And candidates, the question is on the quality of resilience. No president can succeed without resilience. Every president confronts crises, defeats, and mistakes. So I want to ask each of you, what's the most significant professional setback you've had to face? How did you recover from it? And what did you learn from it? Vice President Biden.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that are unimportant.
We're going to clear the protesters now. Just 1 minute. Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
I'm sorry.
We're sorry. Go ahead.
There's setbacks and there's setbacks. And I think the most critical setback that can occur to anyone is to lose. Well, my dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up. And he say, never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family. And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based how you treat your family and how you went from there. And it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later, when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is that I learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with finding purpose in what you do. And that's why I hope he's proud of me today, because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like my dad, where You have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore. Dad lost his job. You know, we've all went through that in some form or another.
All right, thanks for hanging out. Now I need to look to see what they were trying to.
The way I've dealt with it is
Where's Twitter?
Finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet one foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there. So
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Warren.
I mentioned earlier, I've known what I wanted to be since second grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher. And I invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being tough but fair. By the time I graduated from high school, my family didn't have money for a college application, much less to send me off to 4 years at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship,
right.
And then at 19, got married, dropped out.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what they were chanting.
Took a minimum wage job, thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and
yeah, they probably are.
Someone else for the job.
Oh, it's up in Twitter.
So there I am. I'm at home. I got a baby. I can't have a job. What am I going to do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was I practiced law for about 45 minutes and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights. It gave me new tools. And the reason I'm standing here today is because I got back up. I fought back. I know what's broken. I want to be.
Did she just call her university students special needs?
That's why I'm here.
That was messed up, Warren. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She did not say that.
Means growing up in a rent-controlled apartment.
It's jokes.
Brooklyn, New York.
For legal reasons, that was a joke.
Who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10-vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken
Bernie,
on
was that in like 1904?
Every powerful special interest in this country.
There was only 20 people living in the entire state.
Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial
Summer of 1902.
complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will.
He sounds like he's talking underwater.
To take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Harris.
You know, every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time, it can't be done. They said, nobody like you has done it before. Nobody is ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in San Francisco. When I ran for Attorney General of California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only woman black elected Attorney General in the state, in the country. And each time people would say, it's not your time, it's not your turn, it's going to be too difficult, they're not ready for you. And I didn't listen, and a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are. You tell them who you are. And when I look around the town halls that we do in this race for President of the United States, and I look at the meetings that we do in the community meetings, and I see these little girls and boys, sometimes even brought by their fathers, and they bring them to me, and I talk to them during these events, and they smile, and they're full of joy, and their fathers tell them, see, don't you ever listen and let anybody ever tell you what you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Mayor Buttigieg.
You know, as a military officer serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike Pence was governor, at a certain point, when it came to professional setbacks, I had to wonder whether just acknowledging who I was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional setback. I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them,
right? That's what he's going to say.
They decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated.
Like, I'll give him something. If he would have came out in the military, he would have been kicked out of the military.
What's worth more to you than winning? And I think
he would have
that's
been,
what we need in
because
the
that was the law of the land at the time. Don't Ask, Don't Tell
what we are about.
Kept
and this election is
the
not about
gay and lesbian community from being true to themselves to the military. I will tell you, though, the majority of us in the military
trust us with their lives.
Knew who the gay and lesbians in our units were, and we were okay with it because we didn't care. Because all we cared about was whether they were going to be able to have our back when the shit hit the fan.
Then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together, we will win.
That's all that really matters to the Joe on the enlisted individual. We don't care about what they do in their freaking back, in their bedroom. I don't care what they do at home. Which is why I was happy to see Don't Ask, Don't Tell
If you want
repealed
to start something,
finally.
tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped, had its mini rise and maximum fall, lost investors hundreds of thousands of dollars, still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. I guess it was a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor, looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually,
I'm enjoying Yang poking fun at the fact that he's Asian.
For another 10 years,
it's
and
making me
eventually had
laugh.
some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating it was, how it feels like your friends no longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values.
Oh, yeah, Lord Contagion.
Thank you.
That is now a thing on Mixer for partners and verified channels. If you're not pro or subscribed to that channel, you will see an ad at the beginning.
With a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002,
Just started today with
machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had tires on my car slashed, our campaign office.
Be glad that you are subscribed to my channel, Ducky.
It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's
it's supposed to be just at the beginning.
Spectacular failure,
from what I've heard.
Have a documentary team there to capture it because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback. It lost in the Oscars to a movie called Marching Badnap Penguins.
I don't know how much I can talk about. I know there
people in my
have been talks
living in the projects told
about
me, don't give up on the people.
Like mid-rolls,
the people won't
but
give up on you. Create
we
bigger
haven't heard
and
anything
bolder
about
coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later, and won the largest lopsided victory.
That's
in
not a
our
bug,
city's
Mosin. That is an
history.
actual feature.
But more than that,
They
the
don't. They
lesson was
want
there.
people
We
to
didn't
not
give
run
up.
ad
We were
blocks.
taking on
And
America's
honestly,
toughest problems,
I would
from
like it
crime
if
to
y'all wouldn't run
poverty.
ad blocks
We
on
transformed
Mixer,
our city,
because
creating tens of thousands
that
of
helps
new
support
jobs,
me.
the biggest economic expansion in our city, and as I said before, turned around our school system.
It
There's
really
more work
does.
to do, but I haven't given up on the people. I still live in that community. But this is the big lesson. My staff and my friends and my community told me, if you want to go fast, you may have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is
Yes,
about. There's an
Ducky.
old African saying that says,
Probably.
if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go
Lord
far,
Contagion,
go
what
together.
a lot of
The
us
lesson I learned
partners
of resilience is to
have
trust
talked about is
people.
wanting
The
to
power
be
of
able to
people
control the
is
ads.
always greater than the people in
Like,
power.
because
And the test
I
of
usually
America
take a break
right
every
now,
hour and a half
it's not a
of
referendum
my
on
stream,
Donald
so I
Trump,
can
it's a
stand up,
referendum on us,
get
who we
more
are,
drink,
and who
go to
we're
the
gonna be
bathroom,
together.
you know,
We need to
maintain
use
some
this
sort
moment
of
in history
health.
to unite in a common
I would
cause
like to
and
control
common
my
purpose, and
ads
then
so I
there's
can
nothing
hit,
we
hey,
can't do
this is when the
together
ad needs to
as a
roll when I
nation.
take my break.
Senator Booker,
That way,
thank you.
my subscribers, they get to listen to the music that I have on my break screen. And the pro members get to do that, but people who aren't subscribed and who aren't pro members
my hometown of El Paso,
get the ad.
Texas. In the face of this act of terror that was directed at our community in large part by the president.
I'm
of the
not too
United
sure
States that
what
killed
exactly all
22
the
people
ads are
and
for,
injured many more. We were
but
not
I'm pretty
defeated
sure
by
they're
that,
gonna
nor were we
they're
defined
going
by that.
to
The very
revolve
thing that drew
around
that killer to us
gaming
is the
for the
very
most
thing
part.
that helps us set the
Oh, thank you, Ducky.
example for the rest of this country. We don't
Yeah.
see our
Amazing.
differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as
And right now,
foundational to
I'm
our
pretty sure it's
success,
just at the beginning
to our
when you first
strength,
click on a stream.
and to our security,
If you're not
and to our
subscribed
safety.
and if you're not a pro member.
Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the
So it's a good
Fusion.
reason to
This
get
is
pro,
a girls'
and a good
soccer
reason
team of 10 and
to
11-year-old girls.
to be
His
subscribed
name is Luis.
to
He was
partners.
shot in the legs multiple times. He was shot
Hashtag
in the
ad.
side multiple times. He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital bed, he's still trying to coach the Fusion girls' soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital.
I need to
Those two
pull up a
men,
picture of
Jessica and
Bobby
Marcella,
Kennedy.
their wives,
This is
they
bothering me now.
exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge of gun violence in this country, when we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations and our ambitions, it will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Senator Klobuchar.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled with alcoholism his whole life, and after his third DWI, he had a choice between jail and treatment. He chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family, and in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling.
Doesn't
And
that
our
look like
daughter.
him?
And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we're going to have this perfect birth. And
next
she was
time we
really
see,
sick.
next time we
And
see
she
Be-
couldn't swallow.
Beto.
And she was in and out of hospitals for a year and a half. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive
Bobby
care,
O'Rourke.
and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislator, not an elected official, a mom, and I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference
Well, it
committee,
also
so they
appeals to
outnumbered
the
lobbyists 2-1.
the Latino
And when they said,
community
"When should it
in
take
El
place?" They all
Paso.
raised their hand and said, "Now." That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when
Because
I got
it's
to
a
that
nickname,
gridlock of Washington,
given to
D.C.,
people
I got to
with the
work
name
and
Roberto.
pass over 100 bills. And I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country. And someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from. That everyone should have that same opportunity.
Senator, thank you. Secretary Castro.
And thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know, Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side of San Antonio, going to the public schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And when I got home, I took a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year in the year 2000. A few months later, I got elected to the San Antonio City Council. And the City Council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client. And the client wanted those of us on the City Council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build a golf course over our water supply because we relied on an underground aquifer. I didn't think the Environmental Protection Plan was strong enough, so I wanted to vote against it, and my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But under the ethics rules for lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers have ethics rules, you can't just go against the interests of a client. So I was stuck. On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood,
He
my
does.
student
He speaks
loans,
very much
my new
like
house
Obama
payment,
does.
my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the City Council. And, you know, it was the first test that I had, and I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests. There's nobody that gets tested more in a position of public trust than the President of the United States. This president has failed that test. But I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't. I won't serve anybody except you and your family. And together, we can create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Secretary Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd.
Thank you.
As well tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to everyone at home. The debate is over. Our coverage continues with Tom Yamas.
All right.
And George,
So that was it. That was the third Democratic debate. I talked over a lot of their final talking points. I don't know. There was a lot. Castro going after Biden. Castro was going after everybody. Castro just found himself being probably ushered out of the next debate. I mean, you look what they did to Tulsi. You go against the top four right now. You're probably going to not see some fun later. No, I haven't yet. I am actually going to call it there here for tonight, John. I'll be streaming tomorrow. I don't know what I'm going to play tomorrow. I still am up in the air about that because I don't know what I want to play. I might play some more Evolution. I might play some more Greedfall. I've been having fun with Greedfall. Let's see. I'm going to see if somebody on Twitter caught what they were chanting. I'm trying to find out. I agree with that. Sorry, my brother tweeted something. Let's see. I thought I saw something based on it. Okay, yeah. Next Tuesday, just some housekeeping. Hi, Cygnus. Next Tuesday, at 2 a.m. Pacific time, so 4 a.m. Central, 5 a.m. Eastern time. Mixer will be doing a server maintenance for about an hour. Just letting y'all know, because they just made that public. I kind of knew about it already because they told us yesterday. Retweets. Yeah. I can't find out what they were talking about. Sickness, how are you doing on Tuesday morning? I want to know what they were chanting. Anybody know what they were chanting? I can't find it. Of course they did. Nobody knows what they were saying, apparently. Oh, apparently it might have been "Where is Tulsi?" Which is appropriate. Yeah, that's a little bit appropriate. Tulsi Gabbard was not allowed to participate. Was it the Greenpeace people sickness? Because those people are crazy. Yeah, I saw pictures of it. So, a little bit of local news. Greenpeace went down to the port of Houston, which is the second largest port in the entire country, and I think like top 10 in the world. And they were hanging off a bridge to try and block ships coming into the port of Houston. They didn't block really anything, but they were just hanging off this bridge. Oh, I'll have to...
Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
No idea. I couldn't make that out. Yeah, no, I don't think anybody could. Well, part of it is it was a cell phone recording from the floor. Yeah, they were wearing the same shirt. I'm sure somebody will have it later. But anyways, Greenpeace was down here protesting the Port of Houston since, you know, a lot of the country's oil gets processed in the city, or in this metropolitan area. Meanwhile, they're all wearing a bunch of plastic. Their helmets were plastic. The ropes they were using to hang off the bridge were nylon. Their safety vests were plastic. The flags they had were nylon. I don't have a problem with people protesting for things they believe in. I really don't. And in fact, I encourage people standing up for what they believe in. I also have a big problem. There's a sense of you're protesting something yet using all the resources of that one item. You know, it's kind of I have this discussion with a lot of people, especially, you know, people who are big on ending all fossil fuels. Like, I'm all for ending the use of coal for power plants. I'm all for moving away from oil as a fuel source. But I don't, I understand that it's also going to be a progress. Like, you have to make progress into it. You can't just, go and nix it completely. It's just, it bothers me. But yeah, that was funny. We were poking fun at that all day, Sickness. There was a bunch of people poking fun at a bunch of people from Houston that were like, "Get out of our city, man! Just go away." So that's the third Democratic debate. Tulsi Gabbard was not in it. I think they had her in the pre-roll and talked with her a little bit. And I think Castro did the same thing that Tulsi did last week, or last debate, which is find one of the top four, go after them hard, and try to get that bump from going after them. But we all know that doesn't always end well for Democratic nominees. Same at your job also. Yeah. What else? It'll be interesting to see how the polls come out tomorrow, what polls come out in the next couple of weeks of how people feel about the candidates. Kamala irks me. She irks me so much. Biden, I feel like I want to kind of like Biden, but he talked about record players. And that we should use record players to enrich the language of our children. I don't know. He's definitely showing his age. Bernie is showing his age too, because I mean he sounded like he was gargling water the entire damn time. Beto, oh no, Beto irks me the most. I'm not a fan of Beto. He bothers me so much. Beto O'Rourke? Yeah, he bothers me so much. He looks like Bobby Kennedy. He's always bothered me though. And like I said at the beginning when they were he was talking about the 500-year floods that happened, the 3 of them that happened in the Houston area. He's doing that because most people don't understand how large Houston is. Sickness and I live on totally opposite sides of the city. John Knapp lives down the street, so I'm not going to include him. But Sickness and I live on totally opposite sides of the city.
Auto shutdown initiated.
No, don't initiate. Hold on. I need to put something on in the background.
Auto shutdown canceled.
Sorry. Yeah, we live like an hour and a half away. So, like, I'll get rain for a couple of days and she won't see any of it. At all. That's how large this freaking city is. So when he brought up that statement, oh, there's been 3 500-year floods in the city of Houston, what he didn't tell you was 500-year flood happened here in my area near Fort Bend. One of them happened in downtown area, and one of them happened on over in Sickness's area. You know, like, they were more localized than they were the entire city. And he made it sound like the entire city was flooding. Harvey, yes, most of the city freaking flooded. Most of the metropolitan area flooded. But Harvey was a freak accident. Like, the fact that it got stuck sitting over the city of Houston caused more problems than it, you know, just a normal hurricane. Yeah. Plus, the city of Houston's built on a swamp. And I will always say this. The city of Houston's built on a swamp, which creates more drainage issues than people understand. That's why we have bayous all through the entire city to help with the water. No. What? No in? No in? What's up, Hooli? How are you doing? You're a swamp. You're a swamp. No. Get out of my swamp! What are you doing in my swamp? You are in a swamp? I mean, you do live in a swamp. But, I mean, it happens. It's part of living in Houston. I know, it sounded just like Shrek, right? And had that Scottish accent down. What are you doing in my swamp? I can't do it. I can't do Scottish accents. I know you live in Richmond. I know where you live, John. I've been to your house. We've had dinner together. Gosh. That's good to hear. We just got done with the third Democratic debate. Sorry, John Knapp is my cousin, so that's why I talk to him the way I do. Jamming to the music in the background. The music is provided by Pretzel.rocks. I am doing South this year. I will be at South. I'm waiting to hear back to see if I get media passes. So I'll be at PAX South. I'm also going to be going to High Res Expo in Atlanta. Oh, we having a barbecue? I'm down. I was planning on making some tacos one night, Sickness. I'm going to go pick up some carne marinada from, what is it place? Mio-chan? I can't even think of the name of it right now. From the little carniceria here. The one that's like all over town. I'm going to go get some of that. And I'm going to go get some tortillas. And I'm going to get some avocado and some queso fresco. That'll be good. I'm down, Sickness. Root beer chicken wings. That'll be interesting, Mosen. Get out of here, Mosen. You're fired. You can never say... Look, y'all don't use beef. This is what I'm talking about right now. All right? Texas barbecue is the best because we're the only ones that are secure enough in our barbecuing to use beef. Get out of here. You don't know what good beef ribs are if they slapped you in the face. You don't know what good beef ribs or beef brisket. I will fight you over this, Mosen. What we all can agree on is that Carolina barbecue is not real barbecue. And that the New Yorkers that are claiming that New York barbecue is the best in the world are just crazy. Whisper, we'll see something. We'll see what we can do about that. Oh, but it is on Twitter, Mosen. You should... Oh, my goodness. Dude, I'm on Twitter, and then I'll see somebody say, New York barbecue is where it's at. And then I'm looking at it, and I'm like, dude, your freaking beef rib looks like somebody left it in the damn fire way too long. Did you even smoke it, or did you just shove it into the coals? Oh man, now I gotta go eat. I have some brisket down in my fridge right now. How much a rat cost? Where, up in New York? Probably like $75,000. I was about to say, don't y'all just do pigs up there? And y'all just, like, you know, eat the corn with them? I'll have to try it. But, I mean, Black's Barbecue, Mosen, are you driving down there? Are you driving down here? Oh my God, get out of here, Ducky. If you're driving, you need to go to Black's. There's one in New Braunfels, and there's the original in what not I wanted to say Lubbock, but it's not Lubbock. It's freaking Lampasas. You should. Yeah, Black's Barbecue is where it's at, man. You don't even understand. But, yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow night. I know Saturday night I'm going to play Call of Duty on Xbox for Song Request Saturday. You're more than welcome to come join for that on Saturday. Tomorrow night, I'll decide what I want to play by before stream starts. Clayton coming down from Canada. Wow, that's a long trip. It's gonna be like a week-long trip, man. I forget that Clayton is a Canadian. Bum, 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 bum. I forget all the Canadians though, because they speak so American. Not a lot of the Canadians I know speak with that Canadian accent that we all know and love. Except for the French Canadians. They all have weird accents. So, it'll be interesting. I'm interested. Whisper, okay. It'll be interesting to see what the next debate holds. Who drops out in the upcoming weeks. I think the 10 people that are in it right now will probably still push, but I don't know if dude, Beto. I think Beto's gonna stay in, even though I don't like him. They're French, duh. I mean, of course. Let's see. I'm trying to think what else. What else are we gonna talk? Or what else did they talk about tonight? They made some okay points, but for the most part, there was a lot of half truths being thrown out there on stage. That really bothered me. Well, yeah. I mean, that's all that's going to be for until somebody gets nominated. Castro is more trying to get his name out there, man. I'm pretty sure Castro. Let's see. We'll look at. I misspelled that. Let's see. Wow. Booker was at 2%. O'Rourke's 1%. Yang was 1%. Yeah, Castro's down near the bottom in most of the polls. Him and O'Rourke are polling really poorly. Which is, I mean, I feel like education is going to be the one place where they can sway some people. And I think education is going to be where they go from, where they really focus on when it comes to whoever takes on Trump. Some of the stuff that they said and they threw out there was very directed at certain groups that are potential Democratic voters. But a lot of the stuff that they threw out there was just like, to me, I felt like they either don't know what they're talking about, or they are trying to just put stuff out there that people want to hear. And I'll be surprised if Kamala actually pulls away from anybody. She's in the single digits as well in a lot of these polls. And a lot of that has to do with what Tulsi said in the last debate. I'm surprised Klobuchar made it onto the stage. Most polls have her at like 0.1%. Yang's going to probably hold on to his 3 and 5%. So, all right, guys, I'm going to call it right there. I will be back on tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time right here. We had to start early tonight because the debate started at 7. So I wanted to make sure we got in here and got it all done. I thank you guys for hanging out with me. I love you too, Mosen. I love all of you guys. Thank you for your support. And hopefully we'll continue on with more PieRat TV next week. But back to streaming video games for the rest of the weekend. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you'll have a wonderful evening. Oh, wrong tab. Good night.